Hey guys, working on more Ethereum stuff. We've got a crowdfunding campaign application here. Working on a backend right now and putting this application together using only HTML templating as opposed to using React. So I already put this application together once already using React. I'm just trying a different approach now using only templating. I think that templating is going to make life a little bit easier with regards to some like long running transactions, but I'm not really 100% sure on that just yet. So more than anything, this is kind of like exploratory to see what issues I run into more or less as I give this a shot with just templating stuff. So right now I have deployed a contract to a local test network. And I think I have the ability, yeah, so this is a page right here that lists out the contract, or it's kind of a contract detail page. If I go back to localhost, it shows me all the different campaigns, of which right now there are none, which is okay. Let's see, let's make a new contract right now. Not a new contract, but a new campaign. All right, so this is that. Okay, we'll create. We'll submit, and we get a transaction failed. So transaction failed here, classic issue. This is something that I've been running into just nonstop. Whenever I restart my local test network, the transaction number gets essentially desynced with Metamask. And so you can see the error message that I have here says, hey, the account has a nonce of 0 and the transaction has a nonce of 5. So essentially Metamask gets desynced really easily with my test network. And right now, the only way to fix it is so tedious, we got to restart the network. Or excuse me, reinstall Metamask. That's what I meant to say. So we're going to add Metamask back in. I should really see if I could write a script to fix this thing up and do it automatically, because I'm super tired of reinstalling Metamask. I do it probably about 5 times a day right now because it doesn't have the ability to forget a network after it has been started up. The only way to get Metamask to reset itself essentially is to just straight up reinstall it. So I'm getting really used to these terms of service, I can tell you that for sure. And then we're going to import our existing account to Metamask. We'll connect to our local node, 9545. Is this yesterday's video, Alex? Yeah, pretty much. I kind of feel bad for anyone who's watching the stream because it literally is just like the same stuff over and over again. I'm just constantly reinstalling Metamask and constantly like creating the same contract again and again and again. Like I said, I should really put some time into figuring out whether or not I could put together a script to reinstall the thing. I'm kind of at the point now with Metamask where I almost want to just ditch Metamask and write my own Chrome extension to do more or less what Metamask does. That's really, honestly, that is the point that I'm at right now. I think that would probably be easier and faster than using Metamask. And you know, honestly, I think it would be ridiculously popular in the development community just because right now testing with Metamask is such a ridiculous pain. So it's fine for consumers, you know, for actual users of Ethereum right now, it works just fine. But for any developer, you're just nonstop reinstalling over and over and over again. And as far as I know, there is like a running thread on Metamask GitHub issues. This might even be it right here. No, this is some like Web3 library versioning. Not quite what we want. I don't know, we can search for like reset or something. Watching events, detect, resubmit. Metamask account wipe. Yeah, this is pretty much it. No, maybe not. Before you uninstall, nope, not it. Transaction stuck in pending. Add nonce reset. Oh, okay, well this would be very good for what I'm trying to do. Oh, so maybe once Metamask gets desynced, this guy is suggesting right here, maybe rather than reinstalling, maybe we could switch the provider and back again. Maybe that would fix the desync issue. Let's try doing that right now just so I know whether or not I can really depend upon that. So I'm going to create another campaign right here. We'll submit it. So that created a new campaign. And now let's do one more just to make these numbers like really make sense. So I'll refresh again. I will create another campaign. We'll submit it. Okay, so now as far as Metamask is concerned, the current transaction number is 2. Now I'm going to go back to truffle develop. I'm going to kill the network here. I'm going to start it back up. So now the network thinks that the transaction number is 0 right now, but Metamask thinks that it's 2. So let's now try to create another campaign. We'll submit. And then this one's probably going to fail. I think we might have to refresh the page. Yeah, I think we got to do a quick refresh here. So we'll create again. Submit. Yeah, there we go. All right, so now we are successfully desynced. So I just restarted the local test network. So again, local test thinks that transaction number is 0. Metamask thinks that it's 4 right now. So that guy just suggested that we could change networks. So private network will connect to main Ethereum network instead. And then we'll try going back to localhost 9545. See, I don't think that what that guy said was really accurate. Maybe if there's some way that we can like forget this network or something, but I don't know that you can even forget a network. That's the whole issue with Metamask right now. You don't really have the ability to forget anything. Can I try create again? That's Alex. Yeah, that's what I don't think that I can. Maybe I can re-add right here, but it's kind of conflicting. Localhost 9545. We'll save and go back. Yeah, so as far as this thing's concerned, it's thinking like, hey, you already added 9545. I'm not going to attempt to re-add it. So let's try going back to another network. Okay, I'm not running any network on 8545, so yeah, that's just going to hang. So we go back to 4. Yeah, geez. So unfortunately, it looks like what he just suggested. Add nonce reset item to menu because switching provider and back in is silly. Had a cancel button next to it. Yeah, this is kind of like what we need right here. If we had the ability to like cancel stuff. That's a good comment right there. Yeah, the kind of the I meant the minimum contribution like over here. It's still going to, I see like test over here. It's still gonna, Metamask still thinks that the current transaction number should be 4. And that's not the case. The current transaction should be 0. So like I said, what I really have to do is get Metamask to somehow forget this thing. Like it would say, just every single time Metamask, anytime I do a transaction now, Metamask is gonna think that it should be 4. Metamask doesn't understand why the thing is failing. It prints out the error message here, but Metamask doesn't understand that the reason it's failing is the transaction number. So it's just going to keep on labeling the next transaction as 444 over and over again, and it doesn't have any idea why. It really just feels, the thread I was just looking at a second ago. So here's core contributor right here, and he's saying, well, we don't really want to put like any cancel or kind of like clear button, anything like that into the UI because that would make like normal consumers of the extension, it would be like a misleading experience for them. And that's definitely, I agree with that. That is very fair to say. The thing is that, I am not a normal like consumer of Metamask here, and neither are other developers. So what it really feels like is Metamask needs to have like a normal mode, like consumer mode, and then it also needs to have like a development mode or something like that to kind of enable these advanced features that allow us to easily reset stuff and whatnot. Yes, Casey, I'm gonna be at this like just nonstop for the next month. There's no ending. It's gonna keep going. All right, so unfortunately, because trying to reset the network didn't work, we have to, you guessed it, reinstall Metamask again. Hey, Sebastian, how's it going? Good morning. Yeah, today's my 3rd day of streaming. I enjoy it. Well, I've thought about doing a stream for a long time. but I never actually committed and did it. But I've been doing it for the last 2 days. So today's day 3, and I've actually kind of enjoyed it so far because it just forces me to talk about what I'm doing, and that actually usually sometimes helps me arrive at some solutions or catch some edge cases much more quickly. And of course, people who are watching the stream have also really helped me solve some issues as well that I just was completely blind to. Especially yesterday, Alex helped me out with something in particular, which is great. All right, so Metamask back up. So now we're reset back to transaction count of 0. Actually, technically we're not. Let's restart truffle develop. Okay, so now we should be good to go. So we'll refresh again. We'll create, and this one should work out just fine. Yeah, there we go. So we've now got one instance of our campaign put together. So where I left off yesterday was essentially having the ability to look up some details about these contracts. So here's like the details page for the contract at this address right here. So what I really have to do now is pull out some information about this particular contract and get it to appear on the screen. Right now, like I said just a moment ago when I first turned on the stream, like just a few minutes ago, my goal right now, I've already put together the React version of this application more or less, and it pretty much works like reasonably. My goal right now is to figure out what a pure HTML, like server rendered, server templating type of approach would work. So my thought process right now is that any interaction where we're trying to read data from a contract will be executed by the server, but anytime we want to edit a contract or like spend money or create a new contract, it's going to be something to that's going to be handled by the client side, or essentially the user inside their browser. And so like I just said, I want to show some information about this particular contract right here. So what I really need to be doing is inside of my server, and here's some of the server logic right here, I need to look at the incoming address that the user is trying to look at, and I'm going to want to fetch some information about this particular contract and then show that stuff to the user. So that's my goal right now. One thing that I ran into yesterday that was a real pain though, I got to this point yesterday, but I eventually called it quits, because right now this is such a pain in the rear. And Alex and rplay, you've heard me complain about this nonstop, versioning with Web.js. So I've got Web3.js right here. This is version 0.2. Version 0.2 really only has good support for callbacks rather than promises. And so what that means, that it essentially means that if I want to get a bunch of information about the contract at this address right here, it means I'm going to have to start stacking up a whole bunch of callback functions, essentially the classic Node.js pyramid of doom. So what I really need to do here is, or what would be really nice is if I could use version 1 of Web3 and make use of promises, because then I could use simple async await syntax inside of here. But like I have been harping on for the last 2 days nonstop, and again, rplay and Alex have heard me talking about this nonstop, is that I can't quite use Web.js 1.0 right now, just because it doesn't, Web.js 1.0 really doesn't work with the local test network that I'm making use of right now. That's the big issue. The local test network doesn't have support for WebSockets, but version 1.0 of Web3 only supports WebSockets. So we're basically in this really awkward spot where just these different libraries and these different technologies I'm working with just really do not mesh well together at all. But that's the way it goes. So we got some people in chat. What we got here? Do I plan to add more focus on testing? Small chapter in one of the React courses doesn't make a lot of sense. So that's a great question about testing. I actually replied to someone's email this morning. They were requesting a course around like Mocha or Jasmine. The issue around a course about testing, and let's just assume it's a course about testing a React app. So in order to make a course about testing a React app, we're probably going to have to write a bunch of tests. Well, of course, right? We need to figure out like what we want to test, how we write those tests, all that kind of good stuff. The issue is that to figure out what to test in the first place requires a lot of in-depth knowledge on some particular app. So in a course, I can't really effectively write an app myself and then throw it in front of you inside of a course and say, hey, here's like some really complex app. Let's figure out how to test it. That's kind of unclear because a student would be sitting there thinking like, okay, I get that we're writing tests, but I have no idea what this app is actually doing. So in the context of a course, we would really have to build an app out and then go and test it. So that kind of starts to turn the course from being a course about testing into a course about building a React app. And then like the second half of it, it would then be about testing. So that kind of makes it challenging to make a course 100% about testing, because people's expectations when they go into a course like that is we're learning about testing. Like we're going to write tests. We're not going to be writing a React app. So anyways, yeah, that's kind of the brick wall that I run into every time when I start thinking about a course on testing. We need to build an app so we understand what we're testing, and the app has to be sufficiently complex to make it worth testing and see a lot of different aspects of testing and how it works. But we don't really want to build an app in the course because the course is supposed to be about testing, not about building React apps. So that's kind of the big challenge here. I do kind of agree with Sebastian regarding React doesn't need too much to test. You know, in my own like professional projects that I work on that incorporate testing of any kind, it usually ends up that we're not writing a lot of tests around React itself. Usually we end up writing a lot of tests around like the Redux side of the application. So action creators, reducers, selectors, stuff like that. That's usually what we end up writing a lot of tests around. So a course about testing, maybe it would take the form of like, let's build a Redux app with no React at all. So like literally we would just be writing some action creators and reducers and maybe some other stuff, and we would just test those and not worry about the React app at all. Like just not have a React app, period. And that would really allow us to focus on the stuff that we really test in the wild, like in a real application. And then Sebastian, more React Native stuff. Yeah, I totally know what you mean there. I did a update to my first React Native course like a week or two ago, Sebastian. And while I was doing that update, I was thinking about like, gee, there's all these cool features around React Native that I never really spoke about. So that React Native course is, I just did the update, but it's still kind of showing its age, I feel like. There's a couple of rough parts inside of it. So I don't know, I might end up making another React Native course at some point, but I'm really not sure. Another very high profile instructor on Udemy, Maximilian Schwartzmuller, is making a React Native course right now. I am in contact with Max pretty frequently just because we stay up to date on who does what. So Max is working on a React Native course right now, and I expect that to be a very high quality course. So Sebastian, if you're looking for more on React Native, I would watch for Max's course that's going to come out next month or sometime in December, I think. That might be something that would kind of scratch the itch for more React Native stuff. Okay, so back to this thing. Like I was saying, right now I need to get some information about the contract at this particular address right here, but I'm using Web3.js, and if I want to use that to learn about this contract, we're going to end up with a pyramid of doom of a bunch of callbacks stacked up on top of each other. Nonetheless, I don't think I have a lot of options right now, and I kind of want to just kind of push forward and get some content on the screen. So I'm just going to make it happen with the bad version of Web3 that I'm using right here. So to get information about a particular contract at some given address, I need two pieces of information. I need the address itself, like where the contract is deployed to on the blockchain, and I also need an understanding of what that contract looks like. And by that I mean like what functions the contract has and what those functions return. So the list of functions that the contract has is all listed inside of the contract's ABI, which is right here. And you can think of ABI basically as being like API, it's not far off. So this is essentially like my programmatic description of the contract and the functions and whatnot that it has available. So we're going to take a crowdfund API right here, ABI, excuse me. And I think I had some code that described what was going on. No, I don't. Essentially, we're going to do the same thing that I did right here. So we're just going to do a little copy paste. All right, so there's that. bring it our crowdfund ABI, and then we want to get the thing at rec.body, rec.params address, like so. So this right here makes use of the Web3 library. We instruct Web3 about this contract ABI. So this says, hey, there's a contract, here's how it behaves. And that contract exists at this address right here. This is going to return, I don't remember, I think that we have to interact with this thing with a callback. I think we need to look at some documentation real quick. I'm still waking up right now. Still waking up, so I need to get a quick reminder. Unfortunately, the documentation, this is more about, it doesn't quite show us, I think that's all I get. So this would be like an instance, and we're going to call a method on that instance. So we'll call this the instance, like so. And then the first thing that I want to learn about this contract, let's take a short pause here. Lewis, you're asking about Ethereum over Bitcoin. Bitcoin right now, Bitcoin is a lot more about speculation into the value of Bitcoin, and there are a limited number of very practical uses of Bitcoin just because it costs, well, what's the best way of putting it? Basically, with Bitcoin, it's kind of a very simple, straightforward blockchain right now. And yeah, there's a lot of hype there as well. Casey is correct. So with Bitcoin, we don't really have a lot of super interesting things that we can do with it too well. With Ethereum, we get this entire platform, we get the ability to execute code, we get the ability to programmatically handle money. That is the case with Ethereum. We don't get that with Bitcoin. So a lot of the very interesting application development that's occurring right now is occurring with Ethereum rather than Bitcoin. So that's why I'm focused on Ethereum right now, just because from a developer perspective, it is much, much more interesting and we can do far more interesting things with it. Casey, where am I from? I live in Redwood City, California, which is like halfway between San Francisco and San Jose. So essentially I'm in the Bay Area. I'm like 30 minutes away from San Francisco. Don't understand blockchain and why it's important. The blockchain, I don't want to, the answer that everyone gives to that, like what the blockchain is, they always refer to it as like a distributed ledger. Basically, you can think of it as a very public record of transactions and money being sent. So if I promised Casey, if I promised to give you like $5 in exchange for you like giving me a used phone or something like that, maybe you come over to my house, you give me the used phone, and then I pay you $5 with Ethereum. That transaction, like me sending you that money, would be recorded, and anyone could go back and reference that transaction and see, oh, Steven sent Casey $5. And that would be like if you ever came back to me and said, hey, I gave you my phone, but you never paid me any money. Well, I would say, oh, no, that's not the case. We can go look at the blockchain right here. This is a distributed record of all money that has been sent over Ethereum network. And I could go and point at that transaction that says, hey, look, Casey, right here, it says in black and white, I gave you $5. And there is absolutely nothing you could possibly do to dispute and say like, yes, yeah, Casey, you're correct. It helps keep records, essentially. So there's really nothing you could do that would say like, oh no, the blockchain is lying. No, that's not the case. You definitely got the money. That's just one like very simple example, but it's probably the easiest to, very easily understand. Okay, so back to it. We're going to print out the owner of the contract right now. I think that we can just do instance.owner. This is going to be a call. It's going to be coming from, I don't know that we actually need a from here, but we'll try. I was doing a lot of reading last night into, one second, let's see if we do a from web3. I don't know that we actually need this, but we'll find out really soon. Web3 accounts at 0. And we'll do our callback of error. And actually I'm going to call this owner. I get the feeling that I'm probably doing something wrong right here, but we're just going to run with it for right now. Okay, so that's going to get our owner and then pass it into our template. Okay, and then inside of our template, I'm going to want to show the owner address on the screen. So here's views, contracts, show, h1 detail. We'll do a div that has something like that. I think that should work. I don't know that it's going to work, but we'll give it a quick shot. So let's make sure we don't have any big typos. Okay, everything looks good. Let's refresh. Yeah, that's bad. Invalid address. So that's okay. Invalid address means that when I tried to make a call right here, chances are this thing right here is not actually defined, which is okay. Let's do a Web3. Let's just print out and see what accounts we have access to. Okay, so we definitely have a lot of accounts here. That's looking fine. So who is complaining about a bad address? Anton, that's a great question. What is this app all about? The app that I'm building right here, so I've built this like variations of this app like 3 times right now, just to test out a lot of different approaches to it. Anton, the overall goal of the app is to make a crowdfunding application that sits on top of Ethereum. So this is my contract right here. The contract is a thing that actually gets executed on the Ethereum blockchain. So it's essentially a record-keeping thing. It is all about crowdfunding. So a user can create a crowdfund contract. When a user creates a crowdfund contract, they are the owner of this crowdfunding campaign. Other people, they can then advertise their crowdfunding campaign. They can say, hey, donate to my campaign. I'm going to make this really neat like guitar or something. So other people can donate to this campaign. When they donate to the campaign, they get marked as a contributor, or essentially, I call it internally an approver. Then anytime the owner of the campaign, so like the person who is running the campaign, the person who's trying to collect money and deliver on these guitars, they can request that money be sent from the crowdfunding campaign to some person. The idea there is that maybe the owner of the campaign wants to send some money to like a guitar fabricator to get some test guitars made. All the different approvers, and remember approvers are people who have contributed money to this campaign, they have to then approve that transaction. They have to say like, okay, we understand that you're trying to send money to this guitar manufacturer, so the approvers have to come and approve the transaction, and only after they've approved it will the transaction be sent off to the person making the guitars. I'm not giving the best description of it right now. Again, I'm kind of waking up right now. But essentially, let me put it in different terms rather than saying exactly what it does. Let me put it in different terms. Right now, a big problem with crowdfunding campaigns is that a lot of times people will collect like tens, hundreds, millions of dollars for a crowdfunding campaign, and then they will never deliver. Like they never actually ship any product, or the product will be way late. So that's a huge issue, right? Because when people donate money to a crowdfunding campaign, the expectation kind of is that they should get a product out of it at some point in time. But right now there's absolutely zero oversight that contributors have to a campaign. So the goal with my crowdfunding contract right here is to give contributors some insight into the process of what the owner of the campaign is actually doing with their money. That's the entire idea right here. That's what I'm trying to do with this app. Like I said, I've built out like 3 versions of this already. Right now I'm building like the 4th version that is using HTML like templating, real simple stuff like classic HTML templating. The previous versions I put together used React in different forms. React was a really good fit, but it started to get a little bit complicated because I didn't want to use Redux for some other reasons. If I'd used Redux, it would have been a great fit. With HTML templating, I think that it's going to be a really, really, really good fit for a variety of reasons that I'll probably talk about later on as I start working on this thing. Anyways, that's what the app does. Yes, crowdfunding app. I probably could have just said crowdfunding app, and that would have been good enough, but whatever. Here we are. Okay. So we have a error right here, invalid address. That's totally fine. We're trying to figure out what's going on. Rect.params address. let's console log all this stuff out and see what's going wrong here. Rec params address. Okay. This right here looks like a transaction receipt rather than an actual address. I think we need to deploy again. Yeah, I think that's a transaction receipt. So it's not the actual address of our transaction, or excuse me, of our contract. I think that's what the issue is right now. Oh, this isn't too good. You gotta think about this. So right now, let's pull open the code that allows us to create a new contract. So this right here is where we create a new crowdfunding campaign. So we got the console log right here, and that's what I was assuming was returning the address of the newly created campaign. I think that is not the case. I think that is the transaction receipt. So let's create a new one. Oh, you're kidding me, we're failing? Why now? Did I restart this thing at some point in time and I forgot? Oh my goodness. Well, we gotta, okay, so this is reinstall of Metamask number 3 for today, because I must have made some small typo or something. I made some, not a typo, but a mistake at some point in time, so we gotta reinstall Metamask. We're gonna keep count today. We're gonna see how many times I have to reinstall Metamask. So we're up to 3. I'm gonna hook this thing back up. We're gonna restart our network right now. Okay. And we'll do localhost 9545. Okay, there's our account. All right, so we're back to before. Let's do a refresh here. Do our create, submit. Cool. All right, so I'm really suspecting this right here is not our, so it's, I really think this is our transaction receipt. I probably should have started up my log and we could really confirm that. Let's create another, we're gonna create another crowdfunding campaign, and then that transaction log will allow us to figure out what we're really working with here. So I'm gonna create another, we'll submit it. Okay, so 8BB, that's what got returned inside the browser. I'm thinking that this is a transaction receipt. I don't want a transaction receipt. I want the address of the deployed contract. That's the big issue right now. And if we look right here, we can see very plainly it does in fact say this is a transaction receipt. So this, like transaction 8BB. So this is not the address of the deployed contract. So that's definitely a little bit of an issue that we're gonna have to figure out. So Alex and Rplay, if you guys are still listening, you'll recall that I've been working with the crowdfund contract right here a whole bunch. I'm not sure if the two of you saw the refactor that I did yesterday, but I decided to refactor the overall contract a little bit. So now my contract has 2 contracts inside of it. One is called crowdfund and the other is called crowdfund factory. The purpose of crowdfund right here is to serve as the actual business logic for managing a crowdfunding campaign. The purpose of crowdfund factory is to create a brand new contract. Or excuse me, a new instance of the crowdfund contract. So crowdfund factory, its purpose is to essentially spin off new crowdfunding campaigns, and then it keeps a record of the address of each of those campaigns. So I can have one like canonical location that records all of the different crowdfunding campaigns that have been created. I was previously keeping track of all the deployed crowdfunding campaigns in like a simple in-memory array on an Express server, which was kind of a bad approach. So this approach right here is far more, I would say, canonical, or kind of sticks to like Ethereum conventions a lot more. Because now if anyone ever wants to figure out what crowdfunding campaigns are tied to like, you know, my business, they can go and look at this contract right here, and they can say, okay, here are all the different crowdfunding campaigns that have been created, and then anyone can start requesting information about those campaigns. If I don't have this like public repository, this public list right here of all the deployed contracts, it then gets a lot more challenging for people to audit any crowdfunding campaigns that have been created. So that was the idea behind this thing right here. So it now appears that the issue with this approach is that anytime I use that factory to create a new crowdfunding campaign, which I'm doing right here, see the function called create crowdfund. So this will create my new campaign. This creates a new campaign, address right here, this address new crowdfund, this is the address of the newly deployed contract. So I then push that new address into this deployed crowdfunds array. The issue here is that when we create this contract, we are not actually returning any information about the newly about the address of the new one right here. And that's why I'm running into this issue where we can see plainly that we know about the address of the transaction. So this is saying like, hey, the thing was created successfully, but we are not communicating back the address of the contract that we just created. So I'm thinking that a very simple, I was thinking this is actually gonna be really challenging, but I'm actually really happy I'm talking through this stuff. You guys are just great for listening to me talk about this, because I think that what we can do is just return the address of the newly created contract, and that will solve our issue. So now whenever we create a new campaign, we'll then return the address of that thing. And I think we can probably use that to get a handle onto the newly created campaign. So I just made a change to the contract, which means I need to recompile the contract, and I need to completely reset my chain. And as you all might guess, that means we're gonna have to reinstall Metamask for number 4 today. So this will be reinstall number 4. Fantastic. All right, we need to, we're gonna first start off by deleting our build directory. So I've ran into a lot of issues with truffle, with it not correctly overriding previously compiled contracts. So I'm just gonna make sure I just completely get rid of that thing. Then we'll start up our terminal, our local test network. We will then, I'm gonna turn on my transaction log over here just so I can see, get some kind of window into what's happening. I don't need that right now, but I wanna have it open. And now to deploy, actually let's first compile. Migrate will compile, but I like to just compile in a single step. Oh, not return should be returns right here. So we'll compile. Okay, and then we will migrate. Okay, so we've now deployed our contracts. And the thing to keep in mind right now, I have to manually, here's the address of the crowdfund factory contract that just got deployed. So this is kind of like a hard-coded address. And essentially, we're gonna say that this hard-coded address right here, this is like the entire root of my application. Like everything about my app depends upon this crowdfund factory, because this is how we get a list of all the deployed campaigns, and it's also how we create a new campaign. So for right now, I am copying this address and pasting it directly into my server source code over here. So you can see here's factory address. It's hard-coded in, it's a constant. So I am always maintaining a reference to like that address, that factory contract, because it should never change in theory. Now in the development environment, it certainly can change all the time, but once if I deploy this thing to production, like I use this in the real world, once I deployed that factory contract, I would expect it to never, ever, ever, ever change. Okay, so we've got the factory address in there. That is very good. We've got our terminal running over here. So now we need to create a new contract. We need to reinstall Metamask, of course. So let's add to Chrome. I'm going to get our mnemonic to hook back up to Metamask. All right, right, so that was number 4 for Metamask reinstallation for today. I know I'm complaining about that a lot, but maybe if I complain about it enough, I'll get the motivation to figure out like a long-term solution to having to reinstall the thing all the time. That's my hope, I guess. Okay, so we're going to save. So we've now got our private network. It's hooked up. There's the amount of Ethereum we have. Let's refresh the page. So now we should be able to create. And now my hope is that this time around, when we create the new contract, I really am wishing that when we create the new contract, we're going to get back the address of the newly created campaign. That's the hope here. I don't know if it's going to actually happen, but we'll see what happens. Yeah, I think it did not happen the way I expected, unfortunately. Let's look at our log and see what happened over there. Yeah, I really don't think it worked. Shoot. So this right here is probably the transaction receipt again. So A295, yeah, that's definitely what it was. So I'm definitely calling that function correctly. Create crowdfund. And then we console log the receipt. A simple solution here. So the whole issue here is that after creating this new campaign, after calling create crowdfund, I need to know the address of that newly created campaign. That's the goal here. I need to know it. A simple solution would be to look at the list of all the deployed crowdfunds that I have. So this is the list right here, and to just take the last element out of there and say like, okay, well this must be the newly created one. The problem is that that would not be a solution that would scale very well, because if I say have 2 people create campaigns at the exact same time, I would have no idea who created which one, like who created which one first, essentially. So that's the issue right now. So I can't just take the last one and assume that was the newly created contract. Shoot. I could use this function right here to get back the address of all the created contracts. So in theory, I could call this right here. That would return all the deployed campaigns, and I could take out the last element. But like I said, that would lead to issues with the having 2 people create campaigns at the exact same time. So feeling like that is not going to work out the way we expect. I feel like I need to just think this through for a little bit, because I know this factory pattern is going to work. I think we need to do a little bit of research. Factory contract. Let's see if anyone else uses the same terminology that I use. Yeah, simple contract factory pattern. So chances are they're doing something very similar to what I'm doing. Almost exactly right here. Returns address new contract. Returns the address. I wonder where new contract is coming from. I think that might be a typo right there or something, I don't know. Simple hub, Frontend keeps track. Note that cookie is part of the source file. Okay, let's do. Probably need more functionality in the index. What is their index here? Supposed to be index of create, yeah, right here. Consider more fears, are they well solved? Let's take a look at that. Can I create a mapping of the addresses? Alex, I know you said disregard that statement, but I could create a mapping. I'm going to talk about the mapping anyways. I know you said disregard, but the problem with the mapping is that with the mapping, it's very challenging to iterate through all that stuff, to iterate through everything that exists inside the mapping, because remember, we don't have the ability to iterate over keys with Solidity. Like, the keys are essentially invisible. They don't exist like they do in the classic sense of dictionary with Python or a object with JavaScript. The only purpose of this storage array right here is to make it very easy to iterate and like list out the deployed addresses. So I don't think that that's a good thought. You know, can we use a mapping here? But I think that a mapping is kind of at odds with what we're ultimately trying to accomplish. I've read this post before. It's not really relevant to what I'm trying to do. See, I think a lot of these posts are going to be about like what happens or how do I do a factory contract pattern. And I don't think any of them are going to be necessarily about like exactly how do we easily retrieve the address of the latest, how do we retrieve the, like, essentially how do we retrieve the campaign that was just created. I don't think any of the posts there are going to list that out. One thing that was kind of interesting was this post that I was just looking at right here, I think. Yeah, so he actually labeled this thing return an address. I don't know what new contract is supposed to be right here. Let's put this into our Solidity IDE and we're going to play around with this thing just a little bit and see what this gentleman was thinking. So let's get our Mix IDE. Sebastian, regarding uploads, all streams that are recorded on YouTube automatically get recorded and posted up. So even on the stream you're watching right now, Sebastian, you could like rewind and go back to the part where you had first let off if you really wanted to. It's up to you. Okay, so we got some warnings here. That's okay. So we're going to play around with this thing and figure out exactly how this author approached this factory pattern. See if it's behaving any different than the one I'm working with. So we're going to use the JavaScript VM. We want to create a bakery. So we're going to create bakery. So here's our bakery contract right here. We want to create a new cookie. So we'll call new cookie. Let's do that again. I want to look at it in isolation. So new cookie. So here's the new cookie right here. This does not look like it returned anything that I really care about at all. You know, we've got like returns that like my code right now is doing the same thing. This is why I'm a little confused right now, because we have a very clear return statement in here that should be returning the address of the newly created contract. But looking at this transaction right here, it doesn't actually appear to be returning that thing. And that's the whole issue that I'm running into inside of my application is I'm doing essentially the same exact thing where I create the new contract, I then return the address. I'm saying that it should be returning an address, but when I actually call this function, it doesn't actually, I don't get any record back to my application. I'm kind of feeling like this might just end up being a shortcoming of my app. The other thing to keep in mind here is that in the real world, whenever I create a new campaign, whenever I actually create this thing, that transaction might take up to 15 minutes to be completed. So I'm thinking I can't really, I might be going down a rabbit hole here for no purpose, because I think I'd have to just assume that this thing is not going to be completed instantly. I kind of feel like what I have to do is take this transaction receipt right here and then maybe continuously query it or something like that and say, hey, this transaction should be creating a new contract. Is that thing available yet? I kind of feel like that's kind of what I have to do here. Yeah, I think I want to look at that path for a little bit. I want to see what happens with that. So the goal here is to take the transaction receipt. This is the transaction that should be creating the new campaign. I want to figure out some way to inspect this transaction and see if there's any way in that regard that I can learn some details about the state of the transaction. So for that, I think we're going to be making use of Web3.js. So here's the Web3 documentation. We're going to look at the API right here and see exactly what we can do. So here's transaction receipt. let's see. I mean, what the heck? Let's give this a shot. Let's just see what happens when we start working with this thing. Okay, so we're going to Web3 eth get transaction receipt. Here, I'll dial up the size for everyone who's watching. We're going to put in that and then a callback. And for right now, we're just going to console log whatever comes back. All right, so this looks not bad. So we get back, these are in theory some details about the transaction. So we get the block that the transaction exists in. We've got a contract address. I don't know why this would be null. That's a little bit concerning. We get some information about gas. We have no logs. That's also not very good. And then we've got some transaction hash here as well. Transaction index is probably the index of the transaction in the given block. Alex, that's a good question. How did I create the address before I pushed it into the array? So whenever you create a new contract inside of a contract, it instantly returns the address of the new one. So this, when I call new crowdfund right here to create the new campaign, it returns the address and assigns it to new crowdfund. And I add that to my deployed crowdfunds list right here. And then I was really hoping that by returning that address, it would eventually like come back to me, so to speak. But that is clearly not working at all. Like I was just saying though, I think that I don't really want to worry about this return statement right here because in the real world, calling this function might take 15 minutes. And so I probably want to have the ability to like watch and just wait for this thing. Let's see, you're suggesting we call new contract. Alex, I think I'm doing, you can always link the Stack Exchange post that you're looking at, but I think I'm essentially doing something equivalent right here, right now. Oh, so you're saying, I think that address, what you just, so I see here, let me post what I'm referring to right here. So what I just saw you post was this right here, Alex. I think this address right here is not necessary. This address right here, this is intended to coerce whatever gets returned right here to type address. New crowdfund right here, this already returns an address. So we're like coercing an address to an address. So I think that this function call, this type coercion right here is not necessary. Typecasting, whatever you want to call it with Solidity. I don't think that this thing is actually necessary. I could be wrong, but that's my intuition. I kind of want to follow up a little bit more on inspecting the transaction because this is actually kind of valuable to give me personally more insight to the transaction and like figure out how we can work with a completed transaction at all. The other thing that I want to very quickly start looking into as well is events. The problem is events would be a good solution here because after creating the new contract right here, we could emit an event that says, hey, this new thing was just created. And then we could just watch for that event to get triggered. The problem that I think we're going to run into is I'm pretty sure that WebJS version 0.2 doesn't have support for events. Maybe for filter return C content, maybe we do. Okay, maybe I'm wrong. Oh, I think that in WebJS 1.0, the API around events changed. I think that's what I'm remembering. Yeah, okay, so we can watch for an event. So I want to try looking at the transaction a little bit more, and then failing that, I think we'll start looking at a solution that starts using events. Send transaction. I want to read some of the documentation around this again. So this is the object that we were just looking, this thing right here is what I was just looking at in the terminal, in the console over here. So that's this object. So I just want to read some of the notes about it, but I don't think it really has anything that's super useful for us. There was one value in here that was null, contract address, and that was really, I did not understand why it was null. Unfortunately, we don't have anything that, this thing doesn't describe what contract address is supposed to be. So that's not terribly useful. I think this documentation right here is assuming that you are sending the transaction to another user as opposed to a contract. I think that's what's happening right now. Or I think that's what that documentation is supposed to be conveying. All right, so I'm gonna look a little bit more at transaction stuff and figure out what's going on, figure out if we can learn a little bit more about that. I'm not really seeing anything here. Let's do a search here, because I want to follow this up a little bit. So I want to do like Ethereum result of, let's do this. Like, is there any way that we can figure out what the result of that transaction was after the fact? It's kind of what I want to know right now. Accessing contracts, all kind of transactions of a contract, no. Oh, this might look relevant. How to get return value of function for Solidity. Okay, so this might be saying that I can't do what I'm trying to do right now. I think that's what this is saying. Okay, so I want to get the return value of function. Blah, blah, blah. Here's the details, client code. So they create Web3. They set up the ABI address. They load up the contract. They call the function, and then they console log the return value. Okay, so they're doing the exact same thing as I. Oh, okay, so one person right here says declare the function as constant. I definitely do not want to declare my function as constant. I think that this question right here, so this function that they wrote right here, this is kind of misleading. I don't want to go into that right now. Basically, the person asking this question right here, they wrote a function that I think they are assuming is constant in nature. So it said, like, someone right here replies, oh yeah, declare the function as constant. When something is constant in nature, it can't modify the underlying contract. However, we are trying to modify the contract. That is what we're trying to do right here. We are changing this storage value address right here, our deployed crowd funds. We're adding a new record into that list right there. So I think that by suggesting constant, that's not correct. The other thing to note here is that they have some assignments right here that would actually modify the state of this contract. I wonder what would happen if we actually paste this into Solidity. I feel like we would, or the remix editor, because I think that it might actually throw some warnings. Yeah. All right. I believe it. Function state mutability can be restricted to pure. Source code file, no visibility. So let's get some of these to go away. Public. What happens when we put in view? Function state can be restricted to pure. Why does it think that it should be? I don't know, let's just add in pure. What is state mutability already specified as pure? What? Well, either I did or I didn't. No pragma mark, I don't really care about that. Let's get the pragma mark back here. Oh, stop. I accidentally went back in my browser. Now we're gonna have to retype this stuff. Alex, sorry, I saw your comment right there. Let me read it. So after I do my initial investigation, how can I access the address of a contract created by another contract? Oh, Alex, that is exactly what I'm trying to do. Thank you for looking at that. Let me take a look at that. So I assume that's the question we're looking for. How can I access the address of a contract created by another one? Yeah, this is what we want. Okay, so this is what we're doing. The problem is that order of operations thing that I mentioned. This answer right here is assuming that there's only ever like one contract that's being created. let me think through this for just a second here. So I don't think this answer right here is relevant. Let's take a look at this one. So you should make a call before the transaction. Create object, call with object, and I assume that's the string like name. Yeah, okay, that's what they're. Now that you have the, what, I wonder what this address is right here. Yes, you do the transaction hash. So the call is to like run the function for free. I don't see, they're making the assumption here that the address is going to be identical between the call and the actual transaction to actually create it. That is super interesting. I don't understand why that would be the case, but we'll run with that for right now. We'll use that assumption. So yeah, the address, so now you do the transaction. Otherwise, you can calculate the address of future contract like so. Generate address. This is very interesting. That's neat. That the second line receives the transaction oversight. Call object. I can't really read this in here. Let's paste it out to our editor. Oh, okay. So actually this looks super relevant right here. Okay, so he fixed the answer, so this is doing the right stuff. Okay, Alex, great link. Thank you very much. We'll give this a shot right now. So we're going to first do a call to our factory. That should be returning an address. We'll then do the actual transaction, and then once that transaction gets processed, the original address should be like good to go basically. So let's give this a shot. We are going to go over to our template, which is where all of our JavaScript code lives. For just a second, I'm going to turn on JavaScript like so. All right, so here's our submit for the event handler. Right now, we are directly calling create crowdfund. I think that what we want to do here is something like this. So now we've got access to the instance. Then on the instance, we're going to create crowdfund call as was suggested. Again, thank you, Alex, invaluable. So now V right here should be the like expected address of the campaign. Let's mark it as such. So campaign address. Now we should be able to do the real call where we're going to do instance.create crowdfund. And I think that's it. We'll pass in 100 again. We're going to get back error, and we'll abbreviate this transaction receipt. So now at this point in time, right here, in theory, if that answer is correct, campaign address should be the address of the actually created campaign. Now, Alex, I feel like this is still going... Shoot. Let's just give this a shot. Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. All right, so we're going to, let's just keep it easy. We'll start off by doing campaign address like so. Yeah, crossing fingers. Yeah, me too. If this works, I'm gonna be very pleased because it means this like general approach of HTML templating might work out pretty elegantly. So let's give this a shot. All right, so we'll submit it. Okay, well, hey, this looks good. That looks like a contract address to me. I like that a lot. So now the next thing we want to do is make sure that I didn't have any code in here to automatically redirect. So I should be able to now go to contracts at that address. Oh, Alex, you rock. Yes. Alex, you're going to get a special mention in this course because this is the second thing here that you have really, really, really helped me out with. Thank you very much. So owner right here, this is me, or it should be me. Let's confirm that really quickly. It is not me, but that's okay. You know what that OX35 is right there? That is the crowdfund factory address. Okay, so this was something that I was worried about with the factory pattern. So you will recall that the contract that we put together, so we have the crowdfund factory, and then we have the actual crowdfund contract. whenever an instance of crowdfund is deployed, the constructor function is executed right here. The constructor function records the sender of this thing. It records the sender, and that's essentially whoever created the crowdfund contract, this instance of the thing, we are assuming that they are the owner. So just a second ago, when we saw that console log, this right here, when we see this right here, this is saying this person is the owner of this new crowdfund campaign that was just created. That 345 address right there, that is the address of our crowdfund factory. So the owner of our newly created campaign is not being marked as the person who is like calling or trying to like initiate the process. The owner is getting marked as the parent contract, because this is like essentially the person who created the thing, if that makes any sense. Like this contract right here is the person who created that campaign. It's the person who created this instance. So I think that what we have to do here is probably just add an additional argument to the constructor of message.sender. So inside this function, message.sender will be the person who called this. So essentially like me in the browser. Message.sender will be the like person who is trying to actually create the contract. So now inside of crowdfund, rather than using message.sender right here and assuming they are the owner, we're going to take on address of let's call this like creator, and that person is going to be the owner, like so. So that'll fix it. That should be good. That's good news. The bad news is that, you guessed it, we gotta reinstall Metamask and use this new transaction. Actually, don't think we actually needed to. Yeah, shoot, I don't think we had to reinstall Metamask this time. We could have just redeployed the contract, but oh well, that's life. Okay, so let's kill that build directory, because again, I am convinced that Truffle just doesn't treat it correctly. We're going to compile Truffle, oops. Okay, and then we'll truffle develop, and we'll start up our log over here as well. And we're going to migrate. Okay, here's OX345. So that's unchanging, so I don't think we need to actually update that factory address. But we do have to set up Metamask again. Okay, I think this is this number 5 from Metamask today, or is this number 6? I forget. We'll be conservative. We'll say it's reinstall number 5. Yes, 5. Alex, you're right. All right. Not yet. We want to do the account first. And then we want to do our custom, save it, back. Okay, so now we're going to go back here. So the owner that we are hoping for should have 627. That's the address. That's what we want to see after we create the thing. So the contract's new. We'll create. So here's the address. We'll put in something in a little bit to automatically forward on to this, but now we should be able to inspect this contract by going here. And we get our owner, which is 627. That's what I said, right? Yep, 627. There we go. Sweet. Okay, so that required a little bit of a contract change, but I think that's okay. I think no matter what, the factory pattern would require this, like essentially no matter what. So I think I'm happy with this right here. What is kind of interesting is that it would, in theory, allow anyone to deploy a crowdfund contract and like specify someone else as the owner. But I really struggle to think of a case where that is a bad thing. I think that's okay, because anyone can deploy an instance of the crowdfund contract right here, but what really matters is whether or not crowdfund factory let's see. Yeah, I think we're okay. I think we're okay. Because yes, this works out just fine. Anyone can call crowdfund factory to create a new crowdfund campaign. That's always going to use that person. And this is the canonical source of all the actual campaigns that were, yeah, so we're okay. I don't think there's any security issue here. All right, so where are we at? So the next thing that I'm kind of concerned about here, we're console logging out the campaign address. That is good. I do want to have that happen automatically, so I think we can do a simple window location with something like that. And we'll do contracts like so. Let's give this a shot and see how it goes. So we'll go back to localhost 3000. I should really put on some, I'm going to do really quickly because I'm tired of, oh hey, look at that. That worked. So now we're listing out all of our campaigns. That's pretty good too. That was something I'd done yesterday. I'm getting kind of tired of manually navigating around those, so we're going to update our template layout really quickly to add in a header. No, I don't want to do a block for that. I'm going to do just the actual header. I'm going to do div. What is this thing going to contain? So I think I just want some anchor tags for right now. No, like that. href. We're going to go to that, and this will have it contracts. We'll keep it bare bones right now. So this will just say list. I think these are the only two links we need right now. List and new. So let's try this out. Okay. Oh, not that. So there's create campaign. Here's the list. I think we're good to go. One thing that's kind of concerning is both those requests for those pages take an awful long time to actually load up. The reason for that is that if we look at our server file, whenever we want to get essentially a list of contracts, we're actually reaching out to the Ethereum network to do a call right here. And this actually should be a call, not, we should be doing that right there. Let's make sure that still works really quickly. Okay, yeah, that's good. We don't actually have to specify call here to be precise. Web3 should be deciding what to do for us, so we'll just leave it like that rather than trying to tell it what to do. But the problem still is that we can't really show that homepage until we reach out to the network and get this list of contracts right here so that we figure out what to render on the screen. I am going to be really curious to see exactly how slow this function call right here is on an actual public network. Something that essentially takes a long time to process. That is super concerning, and maybe that's something that we should start thinking about testing out sooner rather than later. It'd be really nice if we could find like some sandbox where we could just get a sense of how long it takes for a call to be completed. I think I'll come back around to this in just a little bit. For right now, let's just polish up the create campaign process. So just make sure that navigation works correctly. All right, so I'm going to create a new right here. This is going to submit. And then we get navigated over here automatically. So that's looking pretty good. Okay. All right, so that works. I think the next thing we have to do is start to extract a lot more information from that new campaign. So this is the campaign instance right here. Right now we're pulling off the owner, but there is a tremendous amount of other information that we need to request here. So we need not only that, but we should also probably put down the list of approvers. We should talk about we should list out how much money the campaign has at any given time, like essentially its balance. I spent a little bit of time yesterday thinking about how to structure this code. Essentially, like I said about an hour ago at this point, we need to more or less put together like a pyramid of doom right here, of like all those nested callbacks to get back a tremendous amount of information. I think this can also just be owner like so. Let's test that real quick. So we need to do a bunch of calls over the contract to extract all that information. That is definitely, we don't want to do it in serial. So technically we don't really want a campaign of doom, or excuse me, a pyramid of doom. We really want to do all those requests in parallel. And then after they've all been completed, then we want to attempt to do the render right here. Now, if we were making use of promises, that would make life really easy because we could just use a promise.all. But we are restricted to callbacks like we see right here. So I think we could take a look at the async package to do all this stuff in parallel. Alternatively, we could promisify all these different functions and then go ahead and use promise.all. And then finally, the last thing, and this is kind of the direction that I was thinking about originally, what might be the best approach would be to add a new function to crowdfund that returns all of these different values that we care about. So rather than making like n different requests to learn about the owner and the minimum contribution and its balance and the approver, like all this just garbage stuff that we don't really care about, maybe it'd be best to put together a function that we call like campaign summary or something like that. And that returns all these different values in one single function call. Because then we don't have to worry about any complicated async logic inside the server right here. And we only have to wait for one round trip request to go and get all that information. So I really like that approach. I think that's what we're going to do here. So at the bottom, we're going to do like a get summary, essentially, that just returns everything, basically. So we're going to be returning a lot of stuff, and we'll figure out exactly what that is in a second. So let's see, we need to do a like multiple return statement here. I think that's how we do it. We'll find out really quickly. What do we care about here? I think I want to do minimum contribution. I want to do the owner's address. I want to do the balance of the contract. We're going to have to look up how to fetch the balance of a contract within itself. I think I've done that previously, but I just don't recall off the top of my head. I think the number of approvers would be really good, and then maybe like the number of pending requests. Approvers.length and requests.length. I think that might be a good place to start. So this is going to be a uint address uint uint. And then I would, like I said, I would really like to do the address as well, or balance, excuse me. Let's make sure I'm getting the syntax right first for multiple return values. I can test it out very easily by just pasting it into some other contract. Oh, are we locked up here? There we go. I think this thing doesn't like the size of the contract, so we'll just par it down a little bit. Let's get really basic here. Expected primary, oh, not returns, but simply return. If that's the only complaint, yeah, I think this is okay. Yeah, the syntax is okay, I think. Let's do, just to test it. Yeah, okay, so we got the syntax right. We just have to make sure returns turns into return. Okay, so now we've got this get summary function that basically just gives us a lot of information in one go about what we're trying to do here. One other thing that I would really like to do on the crowdfund contract itself is store a short description about what we're actually trying to crowdfund here. So I think that I will add on another property to the constructor. And we're also going to reorder the constructor arguments here because I feel like the minimum contribution shouldn't be first. So we're going to give this thing, oh boy, We'll come back to this. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm trying to do multiple things at once. So we'll come back to that description or title thing in just a little bit. For right now, let's do this. We're going to do migrate reset. I think that should recompile everything and like basically handle this correctly. And maybe if we're lucky, we won't have to reinstall Metamask. So we now have a new crowdfund factory address. So we're going to put that into the server. I really don't know if this is going to work. We might have to just restart everything after all, but we'll find out. So if we do a list, we lost the campaign. That's to be expected. We'll create, submit. Okay, so that works. So now we should have access to the summary function, which will tell us everything that we want to know in one function call. So we're going to do, here's the details for a given contract. So we're going to do summary right here. And this thing should be called with a whole bunch of information in the callback. Now, I don't know when we do the return values, multiple return values, I don't know off the top of my head if we get back like one array right here that contains all the return values, or if they are like enumerated inside this list right here. Really easy way to test that would be to just rerun or reload this page and see if it throws an error. So instance.summary is not a function. Get summary, that's what we want. Invalid number of arguments to Solidity function. Okay, that's interesting. So it doesn't like how I'm treating get summary right here. Why? Maybe we need to like explicitly make it a call. Maybe Web3 is getting confused. Maybe I didn't mark that thing. No, I marked it as a view. So it should be really clear. Nope, doesn't like it. What does it not like about it? Like our function takes no arguments. I think I don't need to specify the from here. I think that's what it is. Yeah. Let's try this out. No, I'm doing something wrong here. I don't know what. So it's get summary, without a doubt. You know what this might be. Let's take a look at our crowdfund ABI really quick and just make sure that this thing got updated appropriately. Okay, so here is our data on the get summary function. Okay, yeah, so that's it. For some reason, the ABI thinks that I have to pass a uint 256 to it, which is like 100% not the case. I'm not imagining things here, right? Here's the ABI. So it's definitely constant. It's thinking that it needs an input, excuse me, of a uint 256. Get summary, that's the right function, and then we are trying to return uint 256, an address, and then the two other numbers. Why in the world outputs? Why is it, I didn't put that in there, did I? This, you know what this really feels like? Again, this feels like a issue with truffle. Because here's our get summary function. Get summary, if we look at the contract right here, here's get summary. We're saying that we are returning a uint, an address, a uint, and a uint. That's all we are returning. However, if you look back at the JSON file right here, so here's get summary. This is listing all the output types for it. And you'll notice that we have uint 256, that's what we want, address, uint, uint. And that is all we should be seeing, right? Uint, address, uint, uint. But if we look back over here, there is one additional return value, and that is complete of type bool. And our contract is not touching complete at all, not even remotely. So this really, really, really feels like another issue with truffle, and the same reason that you see me always deleting these contract build files. That's what this really feels like an issue with Truffle again. So let's migrate again and try this out a second time. Okay, so here's the new address of our crowdfund factory contract. Okay, there's the address. We'll paste it in. So the server should now be up to date. We should be able to go back to localhost 3000. Create a campaign. Submit. Yeah, there you go. So Truffle, yet again. Truffle issue. Truffle, truffle, truffle. Truffle causes me headaches. Makes my life painful. It's not that bad. All right, so over here on the page, you can see that all those different values are just being pasted directly on, which isn't super helpful. So what we're going to do instead is this is an array right here that contains all the different values, all like the summary values anyways. So what we're going to do is call this thing summary instead. We're going to destructure out of it, and then we're going to pass all those different things into the template right here. So we need to destructure out. We need to make sure we get the list here correctly. So minimum contribution, owner, number, let's do approvers count, and request count, and that's all coming from summary. So now we're going to take each of those things and we're going to put them all into our render template. So we'll take all those and put them in. Okay. So now inside of our show template right here, we should be able to say owner is owner. We're going to say minimum contribution is minimum contribution. What else do we care about? Number of other contributors is approvers count. Number of requests is request count. All right, I think we're ready to test this out. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Now that is all getting inserted on the page inside the H1. We need to unindent like so. So let's refresh this again and it should show up in smaller text. All right, so that's looking pretty good. 100 right here is supposed to be ether. We're going to come back to that thing. That's like a work in progress. Right now, 100 as the minimum is hard-coded, so we'll deal with that at some future point in time. I think that what I care about right now is, now that we can actually show like details about the campaign itself, it's now time to start thinking about how to allow users. Let's see, we want to allow the owner to create a request. That's one thing we have to do. Then we have to allow users to list out all the different requests and like be able to approve them and whatnot. So the first thing we'll do is requests. And I've got an entire different set of templates here for handling that stuff. So what do we have to do? You know, one other thing I kind of want to, we'll come back to it, but I do need to still print the balance. Let's take care of the balance really quickly here. Campaign balance is balance. And then we're not actually pulling out balance here yet. Balance. We need to figure out how to get the balance from the contract and return that. And I know I've done this previously. I know it's not hard, but again, I do not for the life of me recall how to do it off the top of my head. So this line is getting really long. We're going to start to do some new lines just to make it legible. We'll add on the balance as a uint for the return type, and then we need to do essentially like this dot balance is essentially what I want to do. Solidity contract balance of current contract. I don't know, something like that. Tell me my balance. I know this is a I think it's a global. This dot balance. I guessed well, I guess. I feel like that this. Okay, yeah, it is this. Yeah, all right. So we'll do this dot balance, like so. Okay, now I'm gonna make sure I killed all the compiled contracts. I did. We're going to migrate, reset. Here's our new crowdfund factory. I'm going to update the address on the server. Now we're going to go back and list. This should now be empty. We're going to create a campaign. We're going to actually create it. We're going to spend money to create it. Okay, and now here's our details. We just have to update the template now. So show.put, I did update the template, I just didn't save the file. So now we should be able to refresh, and campaign balance is 0. Great. Now that capital B is annoying me, so we'll do that. Lowercase b. Cool. All right, so that's looking pretty good. Let's see, what do we have to do next? I was just talking about it. Oh yeah, so now we're going to add on the ability to do requests here. Maybe the first thing we should do is start to work on the route handler for it. Let's do that first. So we'll do app.get contracts. So we're going to look at all the different requests that are stacking up against a particular contract at the given address. So requests, recres. All right, so now we'll do, and get our instance again. You know, I keep on defining this instance thing repetitively. I don't think I need to do that. Oh wait, yes I do, because we want a different instance of the crowdfunding campaign every single time we come to the event handler, because it's always going to change. Okay, so that's looking good. Now we want to get a list of all the different requests that have been recorded. There is a function already on our crowdfund contract to return all the different requests. So get request count. No, that's not it. I thought I had added this, maybe I didn't. So let's do function get requests. And then we want to return, we want to return the array of requests. No, that's not what we want. Shoot, maybe I thought I had a solution for this. Maybe I don't. Let's get approvers. You know, I think that this was that location where I had been assuming that I would, yeah, I think I remember what I was going to do here. So I think that what I have to do is get the request count, and then I have to iterate through my mapping. Let's find the code for this thing. We need to create requests. Here it is. Create request, request.push. And the request is an array with all that stuff in there. Okay. So I think that what we have to do here is return the let's see, the number of requests that we have, and then access them one at a time inside of that array. Super unfortunate, but I think that's the only thing we can really do here. We'll start with that approach and see where it takes us. So whatever, we'll figure it out. So what we have to do here is instance dot, what is it, get approvers, get request count. This should really be get requests, plural. We're gonna do that, get request count. Yeah, gee whiz, we're gonna redeploy right now just so I don't have to make a mistake or come back and fix that in the future. Otherwise we'll get a mysterious error at some point. So we will migrate, reset. We're going to take our new factory address, we're going to put that into the server. We're going to come back here. We're going to do instance.get requests count. Yes, get request count. Looks good. Okay, so that's going to do our call. Now count is the number of requests that we have belonging to our contract. So now we need to look at all these different requests, make a request for each one, and basically just retrieve them. This is another area where doing these callbacks is going to be super unfun. Very, very, very not fun at all. Because essentially we want to make like count -1 request to get request count and fetch each of those like one at a time. I think that for the first approach to this, we're probably going to do a, oh boy. For right now, we're just going to say that we're going to get the first request here, and then we'll come back and figure out a way. But we're definitely going to need some like advanced async handling here, because we need to iterate over this thing and make a request for every single one and use a callback for that. This is really prime territory for using promises, but again, we only have access to callbacks at this point. So like, we'll just come back and we'll figure this out in a little bit. So I want to do instance.get request, I think, or maybe it is simply request. Requests. It's requests. Yeah, requests. So requests, we're going to get the one at 0. Let's explicitly make it a call. No, I don't think we really need that. I think it knows. We'll do our callback handler, error request. All right, now when request comes back right here, this is actually going to be an array. So we're going to, again, have to do some destructuring out of it. So let's go back to our request right here. The different properties we need to be aware of: description, amount, recipient, approval count, and complete. That's the stuff we really care about here. So we're going to do, oh, I can't even remember these things. Let's dual screen this. Description, amount, whoops. Let's shrink it down so I can see all this. There we go. Description, amount, recipient, approval count, complete. And this is going to be coming from request. Okay, that looks good. So now that we have all that information, we're going to attempt to render our template, our request template. So I want to do render requests index. And then the stuff we're going to pass in is going to be all these properties right here. Like so. Okay, that looks reasonable. Now the next thing we have to do is start to put together the template itself. So here's our template. I need to put in some layout stuff, like basically this. So we'll say requests for, and then we want to print out probably the contract ID. So as an additional argument into the template, I'm also going to pass in address. So we'll do a little bit of destructuring here and make sure that goes back in. And then we're also going to pass that into our object. So these are all requests for, let's give me a div. We'll do an h3. Address. All right, now we've got the div. And this should really be a, oh, that's right, we don't have multiple, we only have, okay, so a couple mistakes here. Let's kind of concentrate for a second. So first off, editing the show template. I don't want to edit the show template, I want to edit the index template. So here's index template. Secondly, in the future, we're going to eventually have many different requests that we want to render here, but for right now, I want to just render one request. So inside of this, we're going to do the div. I'm going to eventually come back and do some iteration, but not for now. I'm going to put on the, how about just, well, what the heck, we really need all of these. So we're just going to pull it all over. Description, div amount, div recipient, div approval count, div complete. And then we don't need those commas. do need to do some interpolation here like that. And then we'll just paste the property name right before it, like so. All right. So that should print out details for the first request. Now we don't yet have any requests, which means if we go to this route right now, we would see an error message saying that requests at 0 doesn't work. So I guess I kind of got ahead of myself here. We probably should have done the create form ahead of time. So let's do that right now. So we'll do contracts at address requests new. So this will be to create a new request to withdraw money from the crowdfunding campaign. All right, so now inside of here, we're going to do pretty much some of the same stuff as before. We want that. Let's do the new template. We're going to pull some of this stuff in. Actually, what we really need to do is just take the same stuff as we had for new over here. Yeah, this. So this is going to create a request for, we're going to render requests new. And I think the only thing we have right now is the address. So we're going to say we are creating a request for address. Don't need this. We still want the form with an ID of create request. And there's several different elements that we want to put into this thing. So this time around, we're going to have a couple divs here that record some different elements. So we're going to div label minimum contribution. That's not relevant anymore. So for request, what do we care about? When we create a request, we care about a description, an amount, and recipient. That's all we care about. Description, amount, recipient, and we'll say amount in Ether, so rather than way. Okay, give ourselves a little bit of space. Okay, so we've got our form. We're going to show these things, then we're going to allow the user to create the request. Let's just test this out really quickly. I just want to make sure that visually it looks okay. So this is going to be requests. Actually, you know what? Rather than doing that, let's do this thing for real. So on the show, I want to show a button that says something like, or I want to do a link with an href of so on the show page, do I stick in the address? I do not, but I definitely want to. Const address. Yeah, there we go. All right, so that's looking good. So now inside of this, whenever we render the show for contracts, I should now have access to the address, like so. View requests. There we go. Okay, I think that's good. Let's try this. Oh wait, no. Address at requests. View request, and we want to do new request as well. Two links. And we're going to wrap these in divs so we get them on a bit different lines for right now. Okay, address requests, new. This will be create request. All right, now we're set. So I want to go to this page. This will show me details on this particular contract. It looks like we probably have a typo somewhere because we're getting errors. So summary is not iterable. Why would summary not be iterable? Oh, the wrong function is, I must have put on a bad route handler somewhere. Where is summary coming from? Summary. Contracts at address. Summary. What went wrong here? Did I deploy? I think I deployed again, but I never actually recreated the contract or something. I don't know. Let's figure this out. Something's really weird now. Oh, well, it wants to, let's restart. Oh, come on. There we go. All right. So now we're listening. All right, that's why. So I didn't have any campaigns at all. That was the issue. I should probably put in some error handling at some point. We'll definitely get around to that. So we'll create another campaign, create, submit. And now we're getting the same error message again. Summary is not iterable. So definitely some issue with this like summary object that's coming back. Let's console log out summary and error for that matter, right? And see exactly what's happening. Because I know this is just working like 1 second ago. VM exception while executing stack underflow. Well, that's the first time I've seen that error message. While executing f.call, stack underflow. Stack underflow. Do we have any debug over here? Nope, nothing. Why would we? This is why I need to slow down sometimes and test things one at a time, because this was very, very much working, and now it very, very much appears that it's not working. So what is that stack underflow thing? This is definitely going to require some Googling. If anyone is still listening to stream, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I would love to answer any questions that might come up. So it looks like this error message is, yeah, so it looks like it's a local issue. All right, well, let's, we're gonna restart Truffle and Metamask and redeploy again, because it looks like this might be an intermittent issue. So let's kill our build directory again. Gotta reinstall Metamask, which I think this is number 6 for Metamask installs. So we're going to remove from Chrome, add to Chrome. Let's see, I already killed the contracts directory, which means I can start Truffle develop back up. We're going to do our develop log. Here's our mnemonic. I'm going to add the extension. We're going to hook Metamask back up. Come on, Metamask. Seed, password. Did I describe the stack of Ethereum tools in previous videos? Not just here and there, not quite. Actually, I did show a diagram. I put a small diagram together that kind of explained what was going on with all these different tools that I'm using. I didn't save that diagram, but I'll remake it right now. Let's just redo it. Let me just very quickly test this thing out again. Before that, all right. Oh, come on. Okay, so we need to migrate. Forgot that step. Okay, so here's our contract. Boom. Hey Joshua, how's it going? And Nem, nice to see you here too, man. Glad you enjoyed my courses. I'm working on some Ethereum stuff. Like I said, if you have any questions, just let me know. So we'll do a quick diagram here just to kind of explain some of the tooling and whatnot that I'm making use of for this application. Let's see. So the first thing to understand is, I don't know exactly how into Ethereum anyone here is, so I'll just do, I'm not going to do like the whole history of everything or a complete description of everything, but just so you know just a little piece of background. Contract read write. So with Ethereum, we're working with these things called contracts. A contract you can think of more or less as being like a JavaScript ES6 class, like not far away from it. So think of this contract right here as being like an ES6 class. We can stuff some amount of code inside of it that has functions. We run those functions. The class itself has some instance variables or some like state more or less that records what's going on with that contract. And then we have two ways of interacting with that contract. We have the ability to read data out of it, and we have the ability to write data into the contract. So these two methods right here. So essentially we can read data from the contract. With write, we can manipulate the data that sits inside of it. Now, a really important distinction is that whenever we read data out of a contract with Ethereum, that is free. So we can read data for free. It doesn't cost us anything. And I'll expand on what I mean by free or not free in just a second. But to write any data, this costs money. So anytime we want to update the data that sits inside of our contract, we have to pay for it. Now, quick aside on what I mean by money right here. So whenever we talk about Ethereum, especially in like the news or the press, whenever someone talks about Ethereum, they seem to always be talking about like Ethereum coins, right? And it sounds like whenever we talk about Ethereum, we're talking about something that is worth US dollars. So as soon as you start working with Ethereum, the first thing to do is throw out that conception of thinking that Ethereum coins are like dollars. They're not. That's not the purpose. People trade them for money. Totally happens without a doubt, but that is not the purpose of Ethereum coins. The purpose of Ethereum coins is to essentially pay people who own other computers, pay them to run code for you. That is the purpose of Ethereum coins. So if you go and buy some coins right now with US dollars, what you are, I keep saying US dollars, but if you go and buy some Ethereum coins right now with real life money, what you are really purchasing, you're not buying coins, you are actually buying the ability to run some code inside of a contract on someone else's computer. That's what you're really paying for. So when I say right here that write costs money, I'm saying that modifying a contract takes some number of Ethereum coins. So that's kind of step number one, thing to understand number one. Now to go a little bit more into the original question, which was some of like the tooling stuff that I'm doing right now. I just wanted to mention this right here because this is a very important aspect to understand when we start thinking about how I'm organizing this application. So the application that I'm working on, just thinking about the like architecture side, at the heart, we've got this Express application. Let's zoom out here so I can see everything. So we've got this Express application. The Express application works with Pug to produce some HTML. So this right here is a very common setup. So I'm not using React right now. I put together a version of this application yesterday that used React. Now I'm looking at a version that uses simple HTML templating. So Pug is being used to produce some amount of HTML, and that gets shipped on down to our browser. Okay. Now inside the browser, as you all know, we have the ability to execute some amount of JavaScript code. So in the browser, at some point in time, we're going to run some JavaScript. The purpose of this JavaScript is going to be to use a library called Web3. Web3 is used to manipulate Ethereum contracts and essentially read information out of the Ethereum blockchain. So Web3 on the client side is going to be used to write data to, or essentially write data to a contract. Now, as we just said a moment ago, whenever we are writing data to a contract, that costs money. So the reason that I'm essentially running this code inside the browser, I'm only running code inside the browser if its purpose is to write data to its contract. When this is executed inside the browser, it makes sure that the user of my application is the one paying the money. So me, the application developer, I don't want to pay any money for modifying these contracts. I am passing that cost on to my users. And essentially, that is the cost they have to pay to manipulate my application. Now, this is not like trickery right here. Like my users aren't being tricked into paying money. If I try to create a campaign, so this right here, when I click create right here, that is going to be this diagram in action. So when I click create, I'm going to be essentially writing data to a contract, and that costs money. So if I click create, I get this window popping up right here. So my user is not just, I'm not like stealing money from my users or anything like that. My user has to actually look at this transaction that I am telling them they have to confirm. The user is being told very directly, here's exactly how much money it's going to cost to write this data to this contract. Now, in this case, you see that it says like $10 right here. Keep in mind that this is a test network. It's a private local network, so I'm not actually spending $10 to create the contract. So I'm gonna click submit here. That approves the call, and that, okay, this page right here is broken right now. That's what I'm trying to fix. But at this point, I have now written some data to a contract. Now, on the other side of all this stuff, and maybe I need to put like another little layer into this diagram right here, something like this. On the Express server, actually what would be best here, you know, it actually really should be mirrored. Yeah, like this. So the Express server, at some points in time, wants to also inspect these contracts that we're modifying and creating. And like we said just a little bit ago, reading data out of these contracts is completely free. So whenever someone requests a page from my application, on the Express side, I'm using Web3 as well inside the Express application to go and read data from a contract. So this right here is read data from contract. And as we said just a moment ago, this process is free. So the general architecture of my application right now is to say that anytime we want to show information to the user, we're going to have the Express server retrieve that data because that's free and it doesn't cost us anything. But anytime we want to edit any data, we're going to make the user do that operation. The user is the one who has to actually edit data because that costs money and we want the user to pay that. So that's just kind of a brief overview of the architecture. Now, I guess I didn't quite answer the question about exactly like some of the other tech that I'm using here to make this happen. So some of the other technologies, so we're using Express, we're using Pug for HTML templating. We are using, there we go. We're using Web3 to interact with our local test Ethereum network. We are using Metamask. Metamask is that window that popped up asking you to confirm the transaction. So the Metamask is something that usually our users will use to manage their Ethereum wallets and the money floating around inside them. And then the last thing that is super relevant here, two other things, excuse me, well, just one, I think, is Truffle. We're using Truffle to write the actual source code for these contracts that we are reading and writing data to. So Truffle is a tool set that is used to essentially compile these contracts to something that can be deployed to the Ethereum blockchain. That's the purpose of Truffle here. We're also using Truffle to host a local test Ethereum network as well. So Truffle is really the piece of the puzzle that's handling, you know, a lot of the Ethereum tooling for us. We use Web3 to interact with that, and then Express and Pug is really all of our application logic, or kind of, maybe not application logic, that's not, it's really the contract itself that's the application logic, but whatever. So anyways, that's kind of an overview of what's going on here. Yeah, if anyone else has any other questions like that, just let me know. It's really helpful for me to explain some of this stuff because it gives me a better sense of what parts are of all this stuff is like confusing and whatnot. So it's really useful to hear questions. Okay, so more recently, I am getting this nasty message here about a VM exception for Stack Underflow. This was working just a moment ago, and it's all related around trying to show user details about a single contract right here. These issues started appearing as soon as I started trying to print out the balance of a given contract, so essentially how much money the contract has. So I think we'll do a little bit of a rollback on that functionality and see if that fixes the issue. So let's update the get summary. We're not going to return the balance stuff anymore. We're going to redeploy the contract. Migrate reset. So that's going to redeploy the contract. Okay, here's our new contract address that we're trying to work with. We're going to put this into our server right here. And now I should be able to go back and create a new campaign and look at some details and see if that's still causing an error. Question about Solidity. So it's a high-level contract language. Yes. How it compiles and where it stores. So the compilation is done through Truffle, which is a library. So here we can look at my project structure really quick. Okay, so here's my project structure. Node modules, dependencies. Views is all my HTML templates. And then Ether is where I have essentially a Truffle project. So this is a Truffle project right here. Inside the Truffle project is a contracts directory. This is the source code for my contracts that exist right now. So crowdfundfactory.sol, this is the source code for my contract. So if I open this up, we'll see 2 contracts that I've created, and I am attempting, I'm making changes as I go and deploying these to the blockchain. Whenever I run the command at the terminal, I can run compile, and this is inside of a Truffle console right here. Truffle will automatically look inside of this contracts directory. It'll find the 2 contracts I've created and compile them down and place the compiled versions inside this contracts directory right here. So inside contracts directory, you can see these 3 JSON files. You might be kind of curious, why do I have 3 JSON files but 2 contracts? Well, migrations is migrations right here. Crowdfund factory right here, this actually contains 2 separate contracts inside of it. So one contract is called crowdfund factory, and the other contract is called crowdfund. And so that's why you see 2 separate JSON files here. It's because even though it's one file, it actually contains 2 contracts inside of it. So if we look at crowdfund.json, this has a tremendous amount of information about the actual contract itself. So all the logic, description of all the functions inside of here, how they work. One of the properties in here is bytecode. So this is the actual compiled version of my contract that would be executed on the Ethereum blockchain. So here's bytecode, deployed bytecode. Okay, so I take that back. This is the actual bytecode that runs on the Ethereum blockchain. And then we can see like the raw source of my contract and a whole bunch of other details about this thing. In total, this file is huge. It's 3,000 lines. So basically just a lot of different stuff about the contract. So I said that Truffle is doing the compilation. I don't know that it's actually Truffle per se. We'll look into that really quick because I'm kind of curious now. So the library that I assume is actually doing the compilation, I'm thinking is actually Truffle contract. It's kind of like a sub-module inside of Truffle. So we'll look up the documentation for this and look at package.json, and I suspect, yeah, here we go. So inside of Truffle contract, there is a dependency called solc. Solc is a Solidity compiler. So here's solc.js. And yeah, so this is the thing that is actually probably doing the real contract compilation for us. And Truffle just kind of like wraps it all up and you know, exposes some nice bindings. Truffle is definitely not a necessity. We don't have to use Truffle in any of these projects. Truffle just has a bunch of helper stuff to make our lives a lot easier for the development process. Nem, when am I expecting to release this course? My plan is January 1st. That's the plan right now. So I got like just over a month before you'll see this thing go live. So still a pretty good amount of work to do. A lot of stuff to get through. That's the plan. Okay, so let's get back to it. We're going to create the contract. Again, I just redeployed this thing, hopefully in a fixed state. Man, this is not good. So it looks like we still have this issue here around a stack underflow. This is super not helpful at all because all this stuff was working perfectly and now it's not working at all. It's completely broken. I've tried reverting the contract back. I have also restarted my node, the local Ethereum network, and still we're running into these issues. So what could be the cause? What could be going wrong here? I think I know what's going wrong? I think that I restarted the network, but I didn't. I thought I restarted the network. I think that I didn't actually. So we're going to try restarting one more time and just confirm. Now, since I'm restarting the network again, we are going to want to remove Metamask. I think this is number 7 for today. Number 7. All right, so let's start truffle develop. I'm going to get Metamask back in. Grab our mnemonic and compile. There we go. You get Metamask back up. Here's Metamask. I'm gonna accept this. Hook Metamask back up. Gee, I've done this so many times. This is number 7 that I've done this today, so I'm getting pretty quick at it. 9545. Okay, so that's reset. I have now recompiled my contract. I'm now going to migrate the contract. I'm going to grab the crowdfund factory address right here. So this is the address of the contract that I just deployed. I'm going to stick that back into the server so the server knows essentially where the root contract sits. We're going to save this and then we're going to refresh and try going through this flow again. And hopefully it's going to work this time because this is kind of breaking for a mystery reason that I don't understand right now. Okay, so we're going to create campaign, create, submit, shoot, not good, not good at all. What in the world could be going wrong here? So this was working pretty darn sure with the exact same code just a little bit ago. I should really start running geth or some git on this project and make some progress commits so that I can roll back whenever stuff like this happens. So we're gonna have to do a little bit more research into this error message and figure out exactly what is going wrong with it. Yeah, I really feel like this is gonna be it. I really feel like something is really going wrong with truffle, which happens extremely frequently. Let's do a migrate reset and just see what happens here. So we get our new address. We can try this one out. All right, what do we want here? Yeah. Okay, we're going to create campaign again. Shoot. No, it shouldn't be the deployment stuff. Could it be? Let's triple check our deployment script real quick. Crowdfund factory, no, that's working. That's fine. Yeah, I really feel like this is a error with my local network. I've ran into this many times so far where I get these difficult to reproduce errors, and it almost always ends up being some issue with the local network that I'm making use of almost every single time. I think that I'm gonna do a hard reset here. I'm gonna kill the terminal entirely. Let's do this again. All right, so we're gonna do Metamask for the 8th time. Yes, number 8. Where is this stuff? Ethereum workspace, dev, inside of Kickstart HTML. Here we go. All right. Go into Ether. We're going to do our, we got to kill the contract really quickly. Oh, we already did. That's good. Inside of here, we're going to start up truffle develop. Over here, we're going to do npm run start. That's going to start up our server. Okay, that error is okay. We want to migrate. We also want to redo Metamask for the 8th time today. I need to get a little counter to remember how often I have to reinstall Metamask. If you haven't watched my stream at all, the reason I am constantly reinstalling Metamask again and again and again is that Metamask doesn't have the ability to like basically forget the network state, more or less. As soon as you start working with Metamask, it is just like remembering everything that happens. If you then restart your network and like basically wipe out all the transaction history in the local network, that really confuses Metamask and it just stops working entirely. Right now, there's no ability to get Metamask to like essentially reset itself. All you can do is reinstall it. And that's why you see me reinstalling Metamask again and again and again right now. I'm probably gonna spend some time today to look into a alternative solution to Metamask and figure out how I can not have to redo this stuff all the time over and over and over again. That's my hope, but we'll see what happens. Come on, Metamask. There we go. Count one. Okay, so the issue, I really don't like this right here. So if we look closely, it says that this account number 1 already has some like spent Ethereum, which really makes me think that even though I just, oh wait, no, I did the migration, that was deploying. Okay, no, we're okay, we're okay. I apologize. Okay, so we're going to put the new address back in here. Now we've migrated, we've restarted the server, we should be ready to go. New contracts again. Joshua, yes, groundwork for blockchain course. That is the plan. Right now I've done several iterations now through like essentially the same exact application, but tackling it from different perspectives. So I've done like 2 versions with React. I did a version with no view layer at all of this particular Ethereum app. And now at present, I'm working on a HTML templating version of this app. So not having to worry about React at all and really just being concerned about the HTML side of things. So far, I really like this approach of not using React. It makes life a lot easier in several regards that I'm not going to go into right now. But I am hitting every now and then a real snag, mostly around the tooling. A lot of the time of developing these apps is struggling against the tooling in a big, big way. I can't tell you how much time I've spent just trying to wrestle with all the different tools that I make use of and get them to work correctly. And right now is a great example. I'm trying to essentially do this thing, create a new record, so to speak, and every time I do, the application appears to be, it's just crashing, just plain crashing. You can see this is the error message I'm getting right here. Even though I had this exact stuff working like about an hour ago. You could actually rewind in the stream probably and go back a little bit, and I really suspect you're going to see, you'll see basically the exact same code functioning the way we would expect. So right now it's a little bit frustrating, but that's the way it goes. Right now, oh, I think I know what's going wrong. Did that get deleted at some point? Okay, maybe this one's on me. I think this one's on me. The reason that this one is not working. Let's try this again. Gee whiz, I think it's my fault. Let's create another campaign. So F2, let's remember that one. We're going to do another deployment here. Okay, so this one's on me. I think at some point in time I was not paying attention and I accidentally cut from this right here when I really meant to copy. Okay. I've only been streaming for a couple days now, and what I've noticed very quickly is that I am not focusing enough on what I'm typing as I talk, so I think I need to do a better job of watching what I'm typing as I'm doing it. Okay, so whatever, we're back on track now. For anyone who just recently joined the stream, what I'm building right now is essentially a crowdfunding application that uses Ethereum to manage money. At present, users have the ability to create a new crowdfunding campaign. The kind of twist here around the crowdfunding is the fact that anytime the person running the campaign wants to withdraw money, or essentially like make use of money, they have to create a request. And then all the contributors have to approve that request. So I have the ability to create a campaign right now. And at present, I'm making sure that users also have the ability to create requests, which we should be able to click on this right here. Now, if you look at the URL, I haven't tested this yet. That's not quite correct right there. So we're going to do just a quick fix and make sure that the string gets put in correctly. So let's take care of that inside of my, let's see, where would that be? That would be inside of my contracts show folder or file. So here's contract show. Yeah, that's right here. That's a mistake. I'm probably gonna have to do something like this, I think. Yeah. All right, let's go back. Now, I haven't worked with Pug in an extremely long time, and I thought you could just freely like do whatever you want, but I think that it wants me to do some string concatenation here. I did this just yesterday, and I think I'm just forgetting. Node.js on the back end, yes. And then on the front end view layer, the front end is all HTML. Gosh darn it, I know I'm doing something wrong right here. What am I doing wrong? Give me just a second to figure out what I'm doing wrong here. I just did linking yesterday. Index, I think. No, not request, contracts index. Here we go. Oh yeah, okay. When we're outside, we don't need to do the interpolation. That's why. Much better. Okay. So on the back end, yes, I'm using Node with Express. On the front end, I'm doing simple HTML templating. So there's no React, no Elm right now. I already did a React version of this application. So I've done the React version. There were some big challenges around it with React. I wanted to build it with React only and not with Redux, but I think that it's going to be just a little bit too challenging to put together the stuff with only React, not using Redux. The reason I don't want to use Redux is that I'm making an Ethereum course, and I really don't want to assume that if you're coming to an Ethereum course, I don't want to assume that you know anything about React and Redux. That would be really nice. Because if I assume that you know about React and Redux, well, all of a sudden only people who know about that stuff can take the course. So what I would really like to do is have everything use like simple HTML templating at the start and just make sure that everyone can understand what's going on, and then probably come back at the end of the course and say, hey, here's how we would build this app if we wanted to use React and Redux. So that would make everybody happy, because then everyone can learn how to do the root Ethereum stuff, but then the people who want to do it with React and Redux will also have, you know, that additional content. So I think that'd be good. And Zachary Stein, I appreciate your Sonic trailer. I love Sonic trailers myself, but right now we're doing some coding stuff, so we'll do some Sonic stuff a little later, my friend. All right, so back to it. Right now we are working on making sure these links work. Yes, so I want to create a new thing. Okay, the link I just didn't put together correctly here, contracts and contracts like so. So let's go back. Then we're going to create a request, yeah. No, oh, I need to refresh the page. Okay, so we're gonna create, there we go. Okay, that's better. Even though it's an error message, trust me, it's better. So res.render. There we go. So now we're going to create a request for this crowdfunding campaign right here. We have to put in the description, the amount of Ether, and the recipient. I have not hooked up the form just yet, so we need to get the form in here. So the form, here's our description, amount, and recipient. And then we're going to just use some IDs here. So ID description, ID amount, ID recipient, like so. So now inside of, this is some JavaScript code down here. I've got a query selector for the form. I'm listening for the submit event. Immediately after that, I am preventing default. We're gonna just use simple JavaScript, vanilla JavaScript, to pull some values out of these inputs right here and then submit them to our contract. So the first thing we need to do is get our const description. That's gonna be query selector on description dot value. I think that's right. We'll check it out in just a second. Well, actually, we can test out right now. Why not? So description dot value? No. Oh, I need to refresh really quick to get those IDs on the page. Doesn't like it. Can't select it. The input should, oh, you can see that I've got this background image thing here. This is my password plugin. I'm hoping that is not, okay, so we're definitely not getting these correct IDs on here. ID. I know, yeah, I used an ID right here and it worked out just fine. So let's refresh one more time. I feel like this is not working correctly. So request new, yeah, request new, we're at the right place, but these inputs are not getting an ID placed on them. Why would they not? Can we do a class? Okay, so we can do a class, but we can't do an ID. Whatever, we'll run with it for now. So dot description dot value. Yeah. Okay, we're good to go. Okay, so we got our description, and then we want our amount and recipient. So amount, recipient, like so. Okay, so that's the three fields that we care about. That's the good stuff. Let's turn on some JavaScript highlighting here so we can actually see what we're doing. All right, so we've got our factory address. Let's see, do we care about factory address right now? No, we don't. We only care about the crowdfund address. So let's go back to our server. Here's the address. I'm already passing that in. That's fantastic. So that's gonna be address like so. We've got the factory ABI. I don't care about that. I care about the crowdfund ABI. So that's this thing right here. So we're going to pass that into the contract. That's going to be crowdfund ABI. So that's ABI JSON factory address. This will be crowdfund address like so. And that gives us back an instance. And now this time, the function that we want to call is not crowdfund. We want to create a request. So let's look at the code for our contract. Okay, so here's this. We want to create request right here, not create contract. So we want to create request, and all we have to do is call it with these couple arguments right here, and that's it. So we want to call create request. We're not going to call it, and we actually don't even need that, I think. Okay. We want to create request, and then the arguments that we want to pass in here are the description, the amount, and the recipient, which we just pulled out. So description, amount, and recipient. And I think I specified that this should be an amount in Ether, so we need to do a little bit of conversion on the amount here. So amount should really be web3 dot two-way. Yeah, so web3 dot two-way. That, and then it's coming from Ether. There we go. Okay, so description, amount, recipient. That looks good. And the last thing we're going to do here is just console log out whatever we get back, so we understand what the heck's going on here. Okay, let's give this a shot. So we're going to refresh. I want to say buy a couch. That's what I'm trying to do with this money. And I need a recipient to receive this money. The recipient is going to be just someone else inside of my test network. So it's going to be this address right here. We're going to create. Okay, so here's the Metamask notification confirming that I want to like actually do this. We're going to submit, and we get back the transaction receipt. Cool. All right, so where does that leave us now? So we call create request. I think that once we successfully do this, we will then be ready to redirect the user to the request index page where they can see the newly created request. Now ideally we might want to show them the that'll take them to the request page. We might want to actually show them the actual request itself, which would be the request show page. But I'm kind of thinking that we might not do the request show page, so we'll just ignore that for right now. Now at present we should be able to go to the contracts, the request page, which lists out all the different contracts. So let's do contracts requests like so. Okay, that's not good. So let's see what happened. And I made a typo on render again. Great. Res.render. Okay. All right. Hey, all right, hot dog. Well, that's my that's the request I just created. So we're trying to buy a couch. We are requesting 1 Ether right here, and then here's the recipient. We got the approval and false. That's looking pretty good. So we're not done yet. So we got a lot of stuff to do. First thing we should probably do is on this page, rather than showing the amount, I really want to show the Ether. So this is going to be request index page right here. And we are going to do this conversion before we pass this thing into the template. So we'll say amount is going to be web3 from way. Yeah, from way amount, and I want to print it out as Ether, like so. Okay, let's try refreshing. All right, so now we're printing out the amount in Ether. We've got the recipient listed. We now need to make sure that our users have the ability to give approval. So that means on the request index, I think, is probably going to be the most relevant one. We're going to do a button here. It's going to be approve request. This will be script dot. We're going to give this thing a class of approve. Document dot query selector approve add event listener click. So whenever someone clicks on this button right here, I want to attempt to have them approve the contract. So what's that going to look like? So first off, we need to get a reference to the contract again, which is what we just did inside of, yeah, right here. So we just did it over here. So we want the contract address, yeah, all the same stuff. Okay, so here's our crowdfund address. So the address of this contract. Now this is the request page, which already has the address in the template. Oops. So that's good. Got the crowdfund ABI. Is that coming in? No, it's not. So we need to add that. Like so. Then we get our instance. Crowdfund address, ABI JSON. Yep, looks good. And now on the instance, we want to call approve. Let's think this through for a minute. What are we calling approve on? We want to call approve. We want to say which request. Approve request is what it's called. We want to approve request 0 because that's the only one that we have right now. We're going to say that this is coming from Web3 accounts at 0. I kind of want to try without that argument. We'll see if it works or not. I don't really think it will, but whatever, we'll try. And then we'll get error and value, and we'll just console log those out for right now. Okay, let's give this a shot. Okay, refresh. Okay, we're going to approve the request. That pops Metamask. We're going to submit. Hey, all right, it actually worked. That's very good. So now when I refresh the page, I should see approval count increment to 1. So if I refresh, yeah, there we go. So we got approval count of 1. The next thing that I need to do here is to add on another button, this time for finalizing the request. So finalize. And in this case, we're going to do exactly the same thing, more or less. So we're going to finalize. We're going to get the contract here. We probably don't have to recreate the contract every time, so we're going to pull out this block right here. Like so. Like so. And this is going to be finalize request. Like so. All right, let's refresh this thing. So now we've got our finalize request button. Our approval count is 1. It is not yet complete. When I finalize it, I'm going to expect the request to become finalized. So I'll finalize request, and we get a nasty little error message. So finalize request, I think I called it something else rather than finalize request. Let's go and look. I called it finalize approval. Approve request, finalize, that's a name that's going to have to change. Finalize approval, that's a crazy name. Finalize approval, whatever. That is a ridiculous name. Definitely going to have to change that. All right, so finalize request. Again, Metamask is going to ask us to confirm. Now this time around, we don't have any gas specified here. Usually that's a symptom that something is going like very, very wrong. Can you have my babies? Why not? I'm down with that. Let's make it happen. Finalize approval. When I said ask me any questions you want on stream, I'm not sure that I put that question in there, but you know what? Let's go for it. Okay, we get called finalize approval. Oh, it's the arguments. No, we passed in 0. I think we've got to do a from here. I think that's just what it is. Web3 accounts 0. Guarantee that's going to be it. Okay, we're going to finalize request. Nope, that's not it. Oh wait, it's because we got 2 transactions lined up now. We need to reject them all. Okay, let's try this again. Finalize. No. Approve. No. All right, something just went wrong here. Something has gone wrong, but what? That's the question. What went wrong? Well, we're just gonna have to revert it. We're gonna go back and look at what we had before, because this was working when it was like this. So I'm gonna call approve request. Now again, oh wait, I got 3 transactions stacked up here. Reject all. I feel like I want to make a new contract at this point and figure out what's going on. All right, yeah, we're gonna do a new one. All right, so I'm going to create another campaign. Oh, but shoot. Oh, no, this is gonna work. Okay. All right, so we're gonna submit. That's gonna create a new contract. Is Ethereum a cryptocurrency, or is it just a Bitcoin blockchain tech applied to whatever you want? So basically, Ethereum took the idea of Bitcoin's blockchain and they built a bunch of additional functionality on top of it, Joshua. That's essentially what's going on here. So you can look at Bitcoin and use that as kind of a basis for understanding like a quarter of what Ethereum is doing. About a quarter of Ethereum is similar to blockchain, but then, or excuse me, similar to Bitcoin, but then Ethereum also extended that with a tremendous amount of more functionality. So when we think about Ethereum and Bitcoin, 2 completely separate things. You can find people who will trade you currency from Bitcoin to Ethereum. So you'll find people who will kind of act as an intermediary, but there's no transfer of coins or currency directly between the two systems. So the two are separate. Okay, so thinking back to this thing, I need to create a request really quickly to test out the behavior I'm working on here. I need a recipient. Where's my recipient? Here we go. If anyone else has any questions about Ethereum stuff, man, feel free to pipe up. I'd be happy to help out. Buy coffee. Oh, amount in Ether 1. There we go, recipient. Okay. We're going to create. Okay, so this looks good. Now I should be able to go to my contract OXF to 1 right here. So here's the contract I just created. If I view requests, I'll see the one request that I just created. Now I can either approve or finalize a request. If I attempt to approve it, this should work. Okay, so this looks good. This works. Everyone's happy. If I finalize, okay, so I just broke the darn thing. Question about MetaMask, how this window appears. Did it see requests from Web3? Yeah, exactly that basically. So MetaMask is a Chrome extension. When the extension loads up on the page, well, let's just take a look real quick at the code that's actually doing this stuff. Actually, I don't have any code inside this file, so, or this project for this yet. Here, I'll show you a good example of this. So I'm going to refresh the page, Anton. Here we go. So inside of my current HTML document, I have 0 included scripts. Okay, let's go look at the actual HTML template that I'm rendering here. So right now, when I load this page, this is the HTML template I'm loading. So you can see that I have a head tag, I've got a body tag, I've got block content right here, which is essentially where one of these sub templates get inserted. What I'm trying to show you right now, Anton, is that I'm including like 0 script tags into the current project, like no script tags whatsoever. However, if I go back over to the page, so this is what's actually being rendered, you'll see that up here, right above the head, a script tag has been injected. And if I expand the script tag, you'll see a comment right here that says Global Web 3. So one of the things that MetaMask does is any single time it loads up on any page, and it loads up on any page, like if I go over to this page right here, you know, this is some random website about the templating language that I'm using right now, I can see right here that Web 3 has been injected as well. So whenever you install MetaMask, it's automatically going to inject this library or the script tag right here into every single HTML page you ever access. And once that is injected, you then get access to this window or global variable called Web 3. And Web 3 right here is how we are interacting with my local test network. So MetaMask is essentially the bridge from any given web page to my local test Ethereum network. Okay, back to the task at hand. So I just successfully approved the request. When I tried to finalize the request, however, okay, so I'm getting that same error. I need to pull this stuff out really quickly. Okay, so we're gonna pull that out. We're gonna refresh. There we go. So we'll finalize the request. Now when I try to finalize here, I'm getting a like broken gas limit right here. Let's reject this and try it again. All right, finalize request. So I have a gas limit right here of 0. Usually this is a sign that something is going to go like completely wrong with the request that I'm trying to make. So even if I put in a gas limit right here, we can probably submit it and it's gonna, yeah, just completely fail. Base fee exceeds gas limit. This is probably very bad, I think. Base fee exceeds gas limit. Let's try this request again. Actually, you know, that's not that bad. I think I know what's going on. Gas limits. Let's do, I want to do that, whatever number that is right there. Can I highlight that? Yes, I can. 5. Gas limit is set dangerously high. Approving this is likely to fail. Okay, well, let's try this. Yeah, failed. Invalid opcode. So something is going wrong when I'm attempting to finalize this request. So what I would really like to do right now is to debug that. So I can probably truffle develop -- log. So this is going to set up a, right here, this window right here is my local test Ethereum network. This over here, this command is going to just log all the events that occur on that network. So ideally, I will see an event whenever I make this call over here, and it should help me debug exactly what's going wrong here. And we got this issue again. All right, like so. Submit. All right, so again, we've got invalid opcode. Basically, that means that something went wrong with my transaction. So we're going to figure out exactly, we can see if we got any debug. Yes, we did. Okay, so over here, here's the logger for my test network. This is the transaction I just tried to run, but it failed. You can see right here it says runtime error, invalid opcode. So this is the transaction, essentially the transaction receipt or identifier for what I just tried to do. So I'm going to copy this, oops, and if I pull that over to my local network here at the terminal, at the console for my local network, I can do debug. Oh shoot, I gotta paste it again. So I can do debug and then paste in that address. So I'm going to attempt to debug this transaction right here. Okay, so now I'm inside of a Solidity debugger. And so this is going to give me a good idea of exactly what's going on inside my contract. So I'm trying to finalize an approval here. We're checking to see if the owner is equal to the message sender. Yes, it is. We're going to do some math here. Make sure this thing has enough approvals. That's good. Oh, okay. I know what's going on. Oh, I just forgot. I did things out of order here. So remember, the entire idea behind this application is that we're making a quit out of that thing. The entire idea behind this application is it's a crowdfunding campaign. And at this point, I just tried to essentially withdraw more money than my crowdfunding campaign has. Like I said, order of operations thing, I put this feature together before I even added the ability to contribute money to a campaign. So that's my mistake. I need to go back to my campaign show page, this thing right here, and make sure people have the ability to actually contribute money. That's what we need to do right now. So we need to go back to our contract show page. This is where we are rendering this document right here, and I need to add on the ability for people to donate money. So we're gonna say, we're gonna add on like a new div here. It says something like donate to campaign. We'll add on a form. How do we handle all the other forms? I just want to do the same thing here. Yeah, we're just gonna copy that. Okay, form ID. What are we gonna call this? I don't want the ID to be create contract. What do I call it inside the contract itself? I think I called it contribute. We're gonna say amount to in Ether. And then we're gonna add on a input with the class of whatever, Ether, I don't care. Okay, so now down at the bottom, we're gonna add in a script tag, script dot document. Oh, first we need to get our instance to our contract. And I don't wanna write that out by hand. I'm going to do a little bit of copy paste here. So I'm gonna pull in all this stuff right here. Yeah, that's what I want. So we're going to add in all of that. We got our crowdfund address. We got our ABI. Let's make sure the ABI is showing up inside of here. So I'm doing the contract show route right now. Here's contract show. I need to take the crowdfund ABI and add it onto the contract or to the template data like so. So now I have crowdfund ABI at crowdfund address, crowdfund, yep, looks good. Okay. Document.query selector contribute. add event listener submit. In this case, we're going to want to read in that event object. And we're also going to do a little bit of indenting here to make it a little bit more legible. So we're going to do event.prevent default. I got a couple questions here. Let's take a quick pause. So Joshua, trying to figure out what I can do on my own without bothering you, but this Ethereum is some next level internet shit. That is too true. This is like beyond next level, man. This is cutting edge of cutting edge right here. What's the benefit of a decentralized app? So the benefit of a decentralized app is I'm going to try to give you a good reason for doing this stuff without doing so much of the Ethereum stuff has a lot of marketing speak around it. So I'm going to try to not do a lot of marketing speak. Here, how about this? This best thing to do is to give you like a practical example. So I don't know if you heard my description of what this app is supposed to do right here. I had said, I'll just give you the quick description again, essentially building crowdfunding thing, right? The problem with crowdfunding campaigns right now on like Kickstarter or Indiegogo is that people will create a campaign, they market the heck out of it, they collect like tens, hundreds, millions of thousands or millions of dollars, and then they never actually deliver a product. And so all the contributors to that campaign say like, dude, what the heck? You just wasted my money. I gave you like $30 to buy a cooler. You know, that's a real example. One really popular crowdfunding campaign was a cooler with speakers built into it. So basically these campaigns get all this money and then they waste it without actually delivering a product. And so, gee whiz, wouldn't it be really great if the people who contribute to a campaign could somehow like monitor the progress or have some ability to see what the campaign owner is spending their money on? That would be great. That would solve some issues around crowdfunding as it exists right now, to give the contributors a lot more insight into how their money is being spent. So that is exactly what this app is supposed to do. And it is doing that by the contract right here. So I'm not going to go too far into the contract, but basically this contract you can think of as being a thing that holds money. Anyone can send money to this contract. Whenever they send money to it, they get marked as an approver. So they are essentially contributing money, they get marked as an approver. Then anytime the owner wants to withdraw money and use it to like build a prototype or pay a vendor or whatever it is to advance the campaign, the owner has to create a request and then all the approvers have to approve that request before the money actually gets distributed. So to give you that's a very explicit example of what a benefit to a decentralized app is. But essentially, if I had to like more generally summarize it, essentially we are able to handle money without letting anyone rip anyone off. I think that's probably the best way to put it. We are able to handle money in this thing without with decentralized apps and make it more challenging for people to rip other people off. I think that's probably the most succinct definition I can probably give you. We have some ability of controlling money before it gets like sent out. We can put some code that is like very publicly accessible and readable, and everyone can look at the terms of a contract and say, yeah, we agree to these terms. We're going to be like bound by these terms. I don't know. I'm ranting a little bit too much right now. I think I need to think about how to best articulate an answer to your question and then try again. But hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. Let me know if that makes any sense at all, or if you have other questions. Maybe I can give you a better answer than the one I just gave you. Any chance to look at an email I just sent you? Let me look at my email real quick. I haven't looked at my email for a little bit. I am going to take lunch here in just a second. So when did you send me this email? You might have, keep in mind I only check my email like once or twice a day. So sometimes, oh, okay, so you've got objects are not valid as React children. Yeah, so the issue here is you're trying to render a object. That's the issue. Like post.images at 0. That is a, here, let me just pull this up here. Oops. go. Okay, so post.images at 0, this is an object, and you're trying to render this out. And so the error message is saying you can't render a object. So rather than rendering post.images at 0, what you want to do is something like try rendering post.images.description instead. So that's pretty much it. You just can't render a object with React. You used to be able to, but you can't these days. So that's pretty much what you want to do. Hopefully that helps. All right, let's take another look at our app, and I'm going to get lunch here in like a minute or two. Another question is this playlist stream going to be edited for Udemy course? The stream is going to be just like standalone thing. I just thought it'd be kind of fun to show you guys how I put stuff together and answer some questions along the way. So the stream is not going to be the course. I'm going to like re-record everything and make sure it's very high quality for the course, which is what I always do. The series will be available on Udemy. I don't know how much of it I'm going to put up on YouTube for free. I don't know yet. I would like to put some stuff around Ethereum up on YouTube just to give people a better idea of what they're getting themselves into with this Ethereum stuff, but I don't have a great plan just yet. My big plan right now is to finalize all these apps that I'm building to have a really clear idea of what is actually going to be inside the course. So that's my big goal right now. All right, so back to work here. So we need to allow people to contribute to a given contract. Right now we need to get out the, it should be amount rather than ether. So we need to get out the amount there. So we're going to do const amount. So once we got that, we can then call instance.contribute with the amount, I think. And then we put in our callback, and we'll log out the output from that just to see what's happening. Console.log error and value. So we'll see what happens. Okay. Cannot read property description of undefined. That means that you likely made some other change that's causing the image to not appear. If what you had before was working and it's now not, then there's some other change that you just made to your code. All right, let's do a contribution of 2. Invalid number of arguments to Solidity function. All right, that's okay. We're going to contribute. Let's look at the contract definition really quick. Contribute, there's nothing else. Let's look at crowdfund. Contribute, all right, here we go. So input 0, output 0, payable. I think we just need to mark this with a from, because we're trying to send money to it. So let's see, right here, from web theory accounts and 0, like so. All right, let's try this again. Refresh. Syntax error. What do we do now? Oh, there we go. Need an app like this for government spending. Yeah, that'd be pretty sweet. An app for government spending. Yeah, pretty much. There are some really popular, or I shouldn't say popular, but there are startups who are trying to build like skeletons for companies based on stuff very similar to what I'm doing here, where there will be like some action, or essentially everyone chips in some amount of money to this like company that is hosted on a contract, and then the rules of that company are enforced by the contract. So because the contract holds all the money, that's what gives it the actual power, right? Because if the contract didn't hold any money and it just said like, oh, these are our rules for doing business, no one would actually follow it. It's the fact that the contract would hold money that really gives it, you know, any power, if that makes any sense. Okay, cannot read property 0 of undefined. All right, so what do we do now? Query selector, contribute. Is it still called that? Yep. Why? Who's throwing this error right here? Can I read property 0 of undefined? Oh. I think I know what's going on. Yeah, web3.f.accounts. I need to take lunch soon because I'm getting starving and now I'm making some silly mistakes. All right, let's create still an invalid number of arguments in Solidity function. What's going on here? So we got instance, crowdfund ABI. Let's see, crowdfund ABI. Yeah, that's the right thing. We are calling it with amount. Let's console log amount and make sure that's actually showing up in there. Contribute. Oh, I know what's going on. Oops. Yeah, we don't have any arguments. That's the whole issue here. So we wanted to do value is going to be the amount that we want to contribute. That's it. All right. You know what? We can probably stick with the word. No, we'll go with amount just to keep it consistent. All right. So let's try refreshing now. Okay, we're going to try to 2. Yeah, there we go. So now we're going to try to donate 2 to the campaign. Now we still are getting 0 gas limit here, which means something's going wrong with the actual request. We're going to do the same thing that we did last time where we attempt to run the request, let it fail, and then we will take a look at the transaction log and see what happens over there. Okay, down here. So here we go. Transaction log. I want to debug this. Okay, so somehow I'm not actually getting. Oh, I didn't convert the value. That's why. So here's amount right here. We want to do Web3 two-way Ether, like so. Okay, that should be better. So for everyone listening, one thing that's really interesting to keep in mind about all this Ethereum stuff is we talk about like Ethereum coins. You know, you hear that terminology a lot. When you start developing apps, one thing that's really important to understand is that, let's pull up the documentation for it real quick. Ethereum two-way, there we go. All right. So when you hear like the term Ethereum coins, there's not quite anything, you know, that's kind of a misnomer. So whenever you see one Ethereum coin or one Ether is equal to like $400 US, it's a unit of measurement. So one Ether is a unit of measurement. An Ether can be broken up into these other units of measurement as well. And you can think of these other units of measurement as being the same relation as like dollars to cents if you're used to like US currency. Like $1 is equal to 100 cents. Whenever we start writing code around Ether, we are almost always working with a unit of measurement called way. So one way, or I should say one Ether is worth this many way. So the error message that I just saw was saying that I wasn't essentially sending enough money to the contract. And so the way that I fixed it was I made sure that I took this input, this amount right here, is in units of Ether. I had to specifically convert it to way, and that made everything work out the way I expected. So just a interesting thing to keep in mind, because that's a mistake that I have I've just forgotten to do my unit conversions several times now. Okay, so we're going to submit. Okay, so now we should have a contributor. If we refresh the page, we now see one contributor. Fantastic. And the contract should also have a balance now, but I'm not printing that out. I just I ended up deleting it. So campaign balance is, and I got 2 campaign. Where's that text coming from? Oh, amount to contribute in Ether. Donate to campaign. The word donate is being lost here. Oh, I need to put it inside of an element. Let's do a H3 here. That makes a lot more sense. There we go. So we're going to donate to campaign. Well, we already did, so we're not going to do it again. But now we should be able to view requests This request has an approval count of 1, so it's ready to be finalized. So we can call finalize request. And now I should be able to submit, and this request has been finalized. So now if I refresh the page, complete should be flipped over to true. There it is right there. And if I go and check out the wallet of the person I was trying to send money to on my terminal, so let's go and grab that person's ID, which should be right here. Get balance of this account. No, it's web3.eth.get balance .to string. All right, so this person just received 1 Ethereum, which means the contract is working the way we expect, which is fantastic. Okay, so this app is more or, oh wait, no, there's one last thing I got to work on. I think I'm going to take a lunch break and come back and fix up that last thing. Essentially what I have to do right now is every crowdfunding campaign that gets created can have multiple requests created for it. But right now I'm only supporting showing 1 request at a time. And obviously that needs to get really fixed up and have the ability to create multiple requests. So at this point, I'm going to take a lunch break for a while, and I'm going to maybe not stream in the afternoon as well. We'll see what happens. Otherwise, I will catch you guys later. Thanks for sticking around and watching. Hopefully this has been somewhat useful. It really is a lot of fun for me to kind of talk through what I'm doing, because it actually helps me catch errors much more quickly than if I was just, working on it on my own. So again, I'll catch you guys later. See ya.